Chapter 1861. Murong-Yu's strength was obvious to everyone. He could kill a rank 6 rebirth realm expert, like killing a chicken. And he was walking on this terrifying path, as if he was taking a stroll. He didn't fear the corrosion of the white and green light at all. Hence, these people would naturally ask him for help. But Murong-Yu acted as if he didn't see them. He was strong, but he didn't need to save these people. Entering the tomb of the Reverend Shirgu was because he had anticipated that he would one day die. Moreover, everyone who entered this place was greedy. Their deaths, to put it bluntly, were their own fault. Murong-Yu turned a deaf ear to them and continued to slowly move forward. Those who had asked him for help cursed with incomparable resentment, acting all high and mighty. When the time comes, won't you end up like me? You're only in the rebirth realm. How can you compare to Shirgu, who's at the peak of the chaos realm? To this, Murong-Yu shook his head slightly. What were these people thinking? However, he never cared about them, hence he didn't mind. Of course, this was on the premise that they didn't touch Murong-Yu's bottom line. If they insulted Murong-Yu's family or parents, Murong-Yu would definitely send them on their way. The further he went, the fewer people there were on the path. A day later, Murong-Yu finally walked through the path made of bones. At this time, more than 90% of the people had died on the path. Their bones also became a part of the path. Only rebirth realm experts and high-level sector lords with powerful treasures could successfully cross the white bone path. Of course, the younger generation of some rich families weren't included, because their family's experts would protect them. Like the big black dog, although he wasn't in the rebirth realm, under Murong-Yu's protection, he still walked through the path safely. What he saw was still piles of bones. At this moment, everyone who had passed through the path of bones in front of Murong-Yu had already entered the palace of bones in front of them. Hurry, hurry, or they'll steal all the treasures. Under the big black dog's urging, Murong-Yu also walked into the palace. Boom! Just as he stepped into the hall, an incomparably vast and complicated aura pounced over like a primordial beast, wanting to suppress Murong-Yu. The big black dog's body trembled, and he almost fell to the ground. However, Murong-Yu merely let out a cold snort, causing the overflowing aura to dissipate. When Murong-Yu looked around, he saw numerous weapons displayed in the Great Bone Hall. The enormous and complex aura that had pounced towards Murong-Yu was emitted by these weapons, which then formed a torrent of energy. It wasn't targeted at Murong-Yu. Instead, it covered the entire Great Hall of Bones. Anyone who entered the hall would be affected. They were all origin artifacts. A look of surprise appeared on Murong-Yu's face. There weren't many origin artifacts in the palace, but there were still several hundred of them. More importantly, each of them exuded the aura of an origin artifact. Although the strongest aura couldn't reach the chaotic void realm, they were all rebirth realm origin artifacts. Several hundred rebirth realm origin artifacts. Even if they were the lowest level origin artifacts, how many of them did a giant like the Lin clan on Watercloud Planet have? Origin artifacts weren't street goods, and there weren't many of them. If a clan like the Lin clan could obtain these origin artifacts, their strength would skyrocket, and they could even suppress the other great clans and become the true overlord of Watercloud Planet. This was because a rebirth realm origin artifact was equivalent to a rebirth realm elite. This was equivalent to several hundred rebirth realm elites. Therefore, the eyes of everyone who entered this place turned red with envy. Each and every one of them wished they could take away all of these origin tools. However, these origin tools were well protected by various restrictions or formations. These were restrictions set up by a chaotic void realm elite. Although a reincarnation cycle had passed, the might of the restrictions had dropped to the lowest point. However, the restrictions set up by a chaotic void realm elite couldn't be destroyed by a rebirth realm elite. Therefore, Murong-Yu clearly saw many rebirth realm elites burying their heads and breaking the restrictions. No one forcefully attacked these restrictions, because before Murong-Yu entered, many people had already done so. However, in the end, they were all shocked to death by the rebounding power of the restrictions. Bang! The large black dog was drooling and stretched out a large hand to grab the nearest origin tool. However, just as his paw touched the origin artifact, the restrictions on the origin artifact were activated. Oh my God! After a burst of dazzling light, the large black dog instantly let out an extremely shrill scream and was sent flying. If Murong hadn't acted in time to disperse the power, the large black dog would probably have been directly killed. After all, he was only a 9-star sector lord and hadn't even reached the rebirth realm. Of course, this was also the reason why he didn't directly attack these restrictions. Otherwise, even a rebirth realm elite would be shocked to death. These restrictions are too terrifying. Murong, I'll leave them all to you. We're going to take all the origin artifacts here in one go. A few hundred origin artifacts are all ours. We're rich. Woof, woof, woof. The large black dog dragged his tongue and ran behind Murong, only revealing his head as he spoke to the restrictions with a mouth full of saliva. Hearing this, the surrounding people all looked over with disdain. There was no lack of rank 8 rebirth realm elites present. They didn't dare to say that they were going to take all the origin artifacts in one go. In reality, they could only slowly break the restrictions. Let alone Murong. Although Murong was powerful, his realm was obvious. He was only a rank 7 rebirth realm elite. In response to these disdainful looks, Murong only smiled faintly. Didn't anyone tell them that both restrictions and formations were useless against him? However, what puzzled Murong was that there wasn't anyone from a superpower like the Lin clan in the Bone Palace. In fact, when he was outside, Murong hadn't met anyone from those superpowers. Apart from Lin Yuan, Murong couldn't help but feel puzzled. Could it be that the Lin family has entered the depths of Reverend Shurgu's tomb through another passage? However, it was better that they weren't here. Murong would encounter less resistance to take the origin artifacts. Thus, under the disdainful gazes of the rebirth realm elites, Murong slowly reached out and grabbed an origin artifact sealed by a restriction not far from him. Overestimating himself, the surrounding people were very disdainful. If these restrictions were so easily caught, how could Murong have a share of the origin artifacts? They would have taken them long ago. However, their jaws soon dropped to the ground, because they saw Murong's hand grab the origin artifact without any resistance. Then, with a flash, the origin artifact disappeared from its original spot. It was obvious that Murong had kept the origin artifact in the Hichu Luo Shu. What's going on? The surrounding people were stunned. Could it be that the power of the restriction had disappeared? Thus, in their shock, they all reached out to grab the origin artifact in front of them. However, with a flash of light, these people were all sent flying without exception. The restriction was still there. Lucky bastard. This guy must have gotten lucky. The restriction that sealed the origin artifact must have lost its power. This thought appeared in everyone's mind. In the end, they attributed Murong's luck to be able to take the origin artifact. However, some people felt that it was unfair. Why didn't I take the origin artifact? If I had gone, maybe that origin artifact would have been mine. Under everyone's shock and jealousy, Murong dragged the large black dog to the front of the second origin artifact. You were lucky to be able to take the first origin artifact. Could it be that you can take the second one? Everyone was disdainful again. However, soon, Murong gave them another fierce slap. The second origin artifact was easily taken by Murong. Then, it was the third and the fourth. The first one was a coincidence, and the second one could still be considered coincidence. But what about the third one? And the fourth one? Everyone finally came to their senses. Murong wasn't just lucky. He truly had the ability to do so. The ability to be unafraid of any restriction. Because some people had tried, they all discovered that the restriction that had been placed on the origin artifact by Murong was still there, and its power was still so terrifying. Brat, why do I feel a chill on my back? The large black dog followed behind Murong eagerly. He saw that every time Murong took the origin artifact, his mouth would split open a little. At this time, he was already grinning from ear to ear. However, he suddenly said, Murong smiled faintly. Of course, the thousands of people in the hall looked at them as if they wanted to eat them alive, all of them ready to make a move. It would be strange if the large black dog did not feel a chill on his back. Scram! This origin artifact is mine. Muron, you came in front of an origin artifact, and a rebirth tier elite who had been continuously breaking the restrictions on this origin artifact shouted. A cold light flashed past Muron Yu's eyes, but he ignored it and stretched out his hand, directly grabbing the origin artifact in the restriction. A fierce light flashed through the rebirth tier elite's eyes, and he fiercely punched at Muron Yu, wanting to kill Muron Yu. At this time, Muron Yu had already taken over a dozen origin artifacts. If he could kill him, those origin tools would belong to him. In reality, many people had this idea, but no one was willing to be the first to make a move. Woof! Brat Muron, punch this bastard to death for me. Occupying the latrine, but not taking a shit, isn't he courting death? The large black dog hid behind Muron Yu and said sarcastically. Schwa! The rebirth tier elites, who were breaking the restrictions in the surroundings, could not help but blush. They were also occupying the latrine, but it was not that they did not want to take a shit, but that they really could not take a shit. Chapter 1862. In the blink of an eye, the man's fist was already in front of Muron Yu. A cold, killing intent flashed across Muron Yu's eyes. He would never take the initiative to provoke others. However, if others dared to provoke him, he would not show mercy. Since this rebirth state expert wanted to kill him with only a few yuan chi, then he could go to hell. Muron Yu made his move and threw out a punch as well. Boom! Muron Yu's punch met the opponent's fist. After a loud bang, the rebirth state expert's fist exploded into a cloud of blood mist and disappeared on the spot. Muron Yu's fist didn't stop at all as it rapidly flew towards the expert's chest. The rebirth realm expert was astounded, and his figure shook with the intention of retreating explosively. However, just as he was about to retreat, he realized that his body had stopped moving. It was at this moment that Muron Yu's fist landed on the expert's chest. A terrifying force exploded from Muron Yu's fist and surged into the expert's body. Boom! 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 The rebirth state expert felt a sharp pain and saw his body, bones, and blood vessels shattering under the impact of the terrifying force. Before he could even react, his entire body had already exploded into pieces. Then, his vision turned black and he lost consciousness. His soul had been destroyed by Muron Yu's punch. He had killed a rebirth state expert with a single punch. Even a rebirth state expert was not immortal. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people fell silent. Some of the rebirth stage experts who had been itching to make a move suppressed their restless hearts. After all, Muron Yu had killed a rank 5 rebirth realm expert with a single punch. To be able to kill a rank 5 rebirth state expert with a single punch, Muron Yu is most likely a rank 6 or even rank 7 rebirth state expert. He's a rank 7 rebirth state expert. At this moment, a rank 8 rebirth state expert who could see Muron Yu's cultivation level said. As he spoke, his eyes flashed with a strange light. With his strength, he could naturally kill a rank 5 rebirth state expert with a single punch. However, he could see that Muron Yu did not use much strength when he killed the rebirth state expert. His true battle strength was probably at rank 8 rebirth state. Who was this person? The rank 8 rebirth state experts pondered in their hearts. An expert of this level was already at the level of an ancestor on Water Cloud Planet. It was very likely that Muron Yu had come from another planet. On the Yuan planet, it was not a secret that one's eye's eye. However, the cost of interstellar teleportation was extremely high. Even the patriarch-level existences of the Water Cloud Planet would feel heartache if they didn't teleport even once. Furthermore, the further the distance, the more expensive it would be. Water Cloud Planet was just a 1 yuan planet at the edge of the solar system. Basically, no one would come here. This was because there was nothing special about it. Furthermore, the yuan chi of heaven and earth was thin. There were almost no treasures here. The surrounding people could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. As such, no one dared to attack Muron Yu anymore. In fact, when they saw Murong Yu walking over, those who were trying to break the seal left on their own accord. They had no choice. They were afraid of being killed by Murong Yu with a single punch. However, just because no one made a move, it did not mean that they did not dare to attack Murong Yu. The more Yuan weapons Murong Yu collected, the stronger their desire to kill him for the treasures. However, they still needed a fuse. Ha! Since you can collect these Yuan weapons, we won't fight with you. A rank 8 rebirth state expert laughed and gave up on breaking the seal. In truth, it was not that he wanted to give up. However, after so long, the seal did not show any signs of loosening. If he continued, he would only embarrass himself. Murong Yu glanced at that guy indifferently and did not say anything. How could he be so easy to talk to? One could tell just by looking at the strange light in his eyes. Moreover, although these people had stopped breaking the Yuan weapons, they did not leave this palace of bones. On the contrary, some people even blocked the entrance and exit of the palace. As Murong Yu collected more and more Yuan weapons, the light in their eyes became more and more intense. Murong, brat, I have a bad feeling. Do you think these idiots will attack and kill you after you collect all the Yuan weapons? I can't take it anymore. My stomach hurts. Let me rest in the Hichu Luo Shu for a while. The large black dog moved to Murong Yu's side and said in a low voice. Murong Yu smiled faintly. Wouldn't it be normal for those people to attack? Murong Yu had already expected such a scene. Thus, he was not afraid. However, the large black dog's performance made him speechless. Hundreds of Yuan weapons were collected by Murong Yu into the Hichu Luo Shu one by one. And with every Yuan weapon in the Palace of Bones, Murong Yu felt the killing intent in the Palace of Bones grow stronger. Finally, Murong Yu collected the last Yuan weapon. Kill! Just as the last Yuan artifact was taken away, a loud roar was heard. As if they had already discussed it, thousands of Rebirth Realm elites and Realm Lords attacked at the same time. Every one of them exploded with terrifying power, violently attacking Murong Yu and the large black dog. The large black dog's hair instantly stood on end. It's over. Lord Tengu is going to die. There were thousands of people, and a considerable number of them were Rebirth Realm elites. The aura they released together could kill some mid-level Rebirth Realm elites. What more when they all attacked with their strongest attacks? Even the ancestors of the Lin clan and the other clans would not dare to take the attacks of so many people head-on. What more Murong Yu? The large black dog did not have confidence in Murong Yu, and those who attacked were even more disdainful. Murong Yu is only a rank 7 Rebirth Realm elite, so how could he withstand their attacks? An incomparably terrifying power bombarded down like a violent storm. In an instant, Murong Yu was drowned. Then there was no more. When the power disappeared, everyone could no longer see Murong Yu and the large black dog's figures. They were definitely not blasted into pieces, because no one even heard a scream. Moreover, they did not see anything explode. This was because once Murong Yu died, his interspatial ring would fall out. Even if the storage space was unable to withstand the bombardment of these forces and exploded, the Yuan Qi stored inside would still explode out. But now there was nothing. In such a situation, there was only one possibility, and that was Murong Yu had escaped. However, they couldn't figure out how Murong Yu had managed to escape. You really shouldn't have attacked me. There's only one outcome for attacking me, and that is death. Today, this white-bone palace is destined to be filled with rivers of blood. A cold voice suddenly sounded from a corner of the palace. Everyone was shocked and looked towards the source of the voice, just in time to see Murong Yu, who was brimming with killing intent. At this moment, he was holding an origin tool-long spear and taking a step forward. His large hand shook violently. Black light burst out from the black long spear. In the next moment, a spear light that was 10 feet long appeared from the tip of the spear. Total annihilation. There was no technique. Murong Yu held the spear in his large hand and swept it horizontally. Bang! 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 The people around Murong Yu didn't even have the time to react before they were swept away by Murong Yu's gun and exploded. Although there were Rebirth Realm experts among them, their strength was too far for Murong Yu's. The long spear in Murong Yu's hand was also a high-level rebirth realm expert. It could increase Murong Yu's battle strength. Under the sweep of the spear, level 7 and even level 7 rebirth realm experts could not withstand a single blow from Murong Yu. In one blow, dozens of experts were killed, and Murong Yu's massacre had only just begun. These people wanted to kill him, so naturally, Murong Yu would not be merciful. He took a step forward and charged into the crowd. Then, the long spear in his hand swept out again. A cloud of blood exploded, and a large group of people were killed again. They did not even have time to react. Let's join forces and suppress him. The rank 8 Rebirth Realm experts roared as they attacked Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu was using the army character formula and was extremely fast. Before their attacks could land, he'd already appeared on the other side. The attacks continued to land and killed a large group of people who could not dodge in time. In just a few breaths' time, there were only 1,000 people left in the hall. A portion of them were killed by Murong Yu, but a considerable portion was killed by the level 8 experts. However, at this time, everyone had gathered together and formed small groups to protect themselves with their strength. In the process, they also released waves of energy to attack Murong Yu. Murong Yu's expression remained indifferent. His expression did not change at all. So what if they formed a group? If he wanted to kill them, no one could stop him. However, the attacks of the level 8 Rebirth Realm experts were a threat to Murong Yu. After all, Murong Yu's body had not reached the level of an origin tool. Moreover, he did not want to waste his energy to resist their attacks. However, strength was only one aspect. Murong Yu was also a soul cultivator. Soul Tempest. A strange light flashed through Murong Yu's eyes as he roared in his heart. Pooh! 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 A small group of around 20 to 30 people fell at the same time, and there was no sign of life. Soul Attack. The level 8 Rebirth Realm experts were shocked. Even in the boundless starry sky, there were very few people who cultivated the soul. This type of person was undoubtedly the most terrifying person. Soul Tempest. Soul Tempest. Soul Tempest. At this moment, Murong Yu's soul sea was extremely large and possessed an enormous amount of soul energy. It allowed him to use soul attacks without any restrictions. Under the continuous attacks, one expert after another fell. Chapter 1863. Murong Yu's soul had only reached 9-star level, which was equivalent to the realm of a sector lord. However, with his current strength, no one in the same realm could block his soul attack. Hence, when the soul storm exploded, it was simply unstoppable. The number of people in the Bone Palace decreased rapidly. During this process, many people wanted to charge out of the Bone Palace, but Murong Yu blocked the exits. There were 2 entrances to the palace. One was the way they came in, while the other was at the back of the palace. It should lead to the other side. Murong Yu's speed was extremely fast, almost instantly appearing at the 2 entrances. But those who wanted to rush out were all sent flying back with a single punch. Furthermore, Murong Yu had directly smashed it to pieces. The only ones who hadn't been killed were the high-level rebirth state experts. However, at this time, these experts had already gathered together and formed a group. Their faces were extremely gloomy. Some of them were a level higher than Murong Yu. However, their attacks couldn't do anything to Murong Yu. He too and the Book of the Luo opened, and rays of earthen yellow light shone down, firmly enveloping Murong Yu. As Murong Yu's strength continued to increase, Hichu Luoshu's level also increased. At this time, Hichu Luoshu's defense had already reached the peak of the high-level rebirth realm. In other words, even a peak rebirth realm expert couldn't break through Hichu Luoshu's defense and threaten Murong Yu. If they couldn't break through his defense, there wouldn't even be any damage. However, these rank 8 rebirth realm experts couldn't break through his defense. Of course, it was rather terrifying to have so many rebirth stage experts attacking continuously. However, the prerequisite was that their attacks could reach him. Murong Yu didn't fight them head-on, relying on the army word technique. He constantly shifted. This made these high-level rebirth realm experts gnash their teeth in hatred, but they couldn't do anything. However, when these experts gathered together, Murong Yu's attacks were useless against them. Soul attacks were useless. If Murong Yu fought alone, he was confident that he could kill all of them. However, if there were more of them, he couldn't defeat them, unless he used the weapon shard. However, the weapon shard was Murong Yu's trump card, and he used it to deal with the Lin family ancestor. If the weapon shard could kill all of them, then so be it. However, if he couldn't kill all of them, the weapon shard would be leaked. Once the Lin family ancestor knew, it would be difficult for Murong Yu to kill him. Let's leave this palace. A rank 8 rebirth realm expert said in a deep voice. In the beginning, they still wanted to kill Murong Yu's weapon shard. That was hundreds of origin artifacts. But now, they discovered that they weren't Murong Yu's match, even if they joined forces. If this continued, they would most likely be killed by Murong Yu. Every high-level rebirth state expert had the same thought in their minds. Therefore, they came to an agreement and slowly walked toward the exit of the palace. Murong Yu didn't stop them. If he didn't use the weapon shard, he wouldn't be able to kill them. However, he wouldn't let these people go. Soon, the palace was quiet, and only Murong Yu was left. Immediately after, Murong Yu's figure flashed and disappeared from where he stood. He entered Hichu Luo Shu. After choosing a few suitable weapons for Zhao Jiqing, the 5 girls, and the big black dog, Murong Yu took all the remaining weapons. Chaos Furnace refined them. With a thought, Murong Yu swallowed the weapons and began to refine them. In the beginning, Murong Yu only refined low-level weapons. With his current level 7 rebirth realm strength, refining those low-level weapons wasn't difficult at all. The primordial chaos furnace only trembled slightly before it refined a low-grade origin artifact. Then, with a slight tremble, another origin tool was refined. A huge amount of energy began to surge into Murong Yu's body. However, what made Murong Yu shake his head was that although the energy contained in these weapons was huge, compared to the energy that surged into his body after he passed through the rebirth realm, it was like the difference between a firefly and the moon. A huge amount of energy poured into Murong Yu's body, but Murong Yu's energy didn't change at all. Fortunately, there were a lot of weapons. After a quantitative change, there would definitely be a qualitative change. After all, Murong Yu had several hundred yuan tools. Therefore, Murong Yu maintained his calmness, accelerated the flow of time, and began to refine. One by one, the weapons were refined. Murong Yu's strength slowly but steadily increased. Finally, when Murong Yu refined all of the origin tools, he finally made a breakthrough in his cultivation. He reached level 8 rebirth realm. Level 8 rebirth realm. One had to know that the strongest person on the water cloud planet was only at the peak of the rebirth realm, and there weren't many people at that level. Usually, a level 8 rebirth realm was enough to dominate the water cloud planet. If the ancestor didn't come out, who could compete? Murong Yu slowly opened his eyes, revealing a satisfied smile. After breaking through a small realm, his strength was at least 100 times stronger than when he was at level 7. And after the increase in strength, the power of the battle techniques he used also increased by a lot. It wasn't easy compared to before. Now, even if he faced a group of level 8 rebirth realm experts, Murong Yu was confident that he could destroy them all. He was definitely an invincible existence in the same realm. However, it was a pity that the hundreds of yuan tools that he had obtained were almost all refined by him, except for the ones that belonged to Zhao Jiqing and the others. These were equivalent to a few hundred rebirth realm experts. Murong Yu's appetite was really big, and as his strength continued to increase, his appetite grew bigger and bigger. If he wanted to continue to increase his strength, he would probably need Chaos Realm weapons. After leaving the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong Yu walked toward the exit at the back of the Bone Hall. This was the beginning of Reverend Shi Gu's tomb. He was looking forward to seeing if there were more treasures. Was there a weapon hall like this one, with a large number of chaotic void realm origin tools sealed inside? Murong Yu thought to himself, but soon he shook his head and laughed. Although there were many Rebirth Realm weapons, that was because Reverend Shurgu had killed almost all of the Rebirth Realm experts on the Water Cloud planet. These weapons should be the weapons of those Rebirth Realm experts. As for Chaos Realm experts, there were only a few dozen Chaos Realm experts on the Water Cloud planet back then. However, a few dozen Chaos Realm weapons would be enough for Murong Yu to reach level 9 of the Rebirth Realm. But given Murong Yu's current appetite, it was impossible to break through to the Chaos Realm without at least a few thousand Chaos Realm weapons. Murong Yu took a step forward and left the weapon hall. Then, another hall appeared in front of him. There was still a path paved with bones between the two halls. Moreover, the pale white and pale green light seemed to be even more terrifying than before. Murong Yu took a step forward without hesitation. He found that the power was indeed much more terrifying than before. Some low-level Rebirth Realm experts would probably not be able to withstand this power. However, Murong Yu did not see any other cultivators on the way. Those people should have all entered the White Bone Hall in front of them, or they might have died on the way. Just like the weapon hall in front, this hall did not have any restrictions. Murong Yu walked in easily. It was exactly the same as the main hall from before, and there were many things sealed within. However, these were no longer origin weapons, but elixirs. Weapon hall, elixir hall. However, these elixirs were all sealed and no elixir fragrance leaked out. It was impossible to know if these elixirs were still intact. After all of the elixirs were sealed in bottles. Swoosh! Seeing Murong Yu walk over, everyone in the hall instantly focused their attention on him. However, most of the people quickly retracted their gazes. He was just a Rebirth Realm expert who was neither their friend nor enemy. They did not have the time to bother with Murong Yu. This was because they were all trying to break the restrictions as quickly as possible. However, the high-level Rebirth Realm experts who had been forced to flee to the Elixir Hall by Murong Yu suddenly narrowed their eyes. Rebirth Realm Level 8. The Level 8 Rebirth Realm experts who could see Murong Yu's cultivation level were so shocked that they almost cried out. Less than half a day ago, Murong Yu was only Level 7 Rebirth Realm. Moreover, his cultivation had actually attained the 8th rank of the Rebirth Realm in such a short period of time. What was going on? The Rebirth Realm experts looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Furthermore, they could sense that although Murong Yu had just entered the 8th level of the Rebirth Realm, the aura he emitted caused their hearts to palpitate. In other words, Murong Yu was currently stronger than them. Who were they? They were existences who had been in this realm for countless years or even several reincarnation eras. What a monster! What a freak! The Level 8 Rebirth Realm experts could not help but take a few steps back and unconsciously distance themselves from Murong Yu. They were afraid of Murong Yu. When they looked at Murong Yu also sensed it and looked over. When he saw the change in their expressions, Murong Yu could not help but grin. The few Type 8 Rebirth Realm experts could not help but twitch as they retreated once more. However, Murong Yu only smiled and reached out to grab one of the sealed elixirs. He did not have the time to settle the score with these people. Even if he wanted to settle the score, he would have to wait until he obtained the elixirs. Chapter 1864. Scram. This elixir pill is mine. Because there were more people than elixirs in the hall, every sealed elixir pill was basically taken by someone else. The elixir pill that Murong Yu was reaching for was also taken by a rank 5 rebirth state expert, who was currently breaking the seal on it. The higher the cultivation level, the fewer cultivators there were. Even in the second hall, there were not many rank 8 and 7 rebirth state experts. Most of them were even lower-level rebirth state experts. When he saw Murong Yu's hand reaching for the elixir, the rebirth state expert roared and punched out fiercely at Murong Yu. He wanted to kill Murong Yu with one punch. Seeing this, the rebirth state experts who had retreated from the weapons hall could not help but reveal a disdainful smile. A mere rank 5 rebirth state expert could not even block one punch from Murong Yu. What more now that Murong Yu was even stronger? This guy was simply courting death. At the same time, a trace of joy flashed across their hearts. When they saw others being threatened and helpless, they actually rejoiced in other people's misfortune. Murong-Yu's face instantly turned cold, and he kicked out. With a bang, the rank 5 rebirth state expert was kicked in the abdomen by Murong-Yu and was sent flying. In the end, he crashed into hundreds of people before falling to the ground. Cough, cough. The rank 5 rebirth state expert coughed dryly, and blood flowed out from his mouth. His face instantly turned pale. Swoosh! Everyone's gaze once again focused on Murong-Yu. They were all extremely shocked. That was a rank 5 rebirth state expert, but he could not even block one kick. In fact, the high-level rebirth state experts did not even have time to react when they saw the rank 5 rebirth state expert. One could only imagine how terrifying Murong-Yu's speed and strength were. You're courting death. The rank 5 rebirth state powerhouse coughed out a mouthful of blood and roared in anger. His large hand grabbed at the air, and in the next moment, an origin tool that emitted a terrifying aura appeared in his hand. He took a step forward and turned into a stream of light, pouncing toward Murong-Yu. A cold light flashed in Murong-Yu's eyes. Sometimes he didn't want to kill people, but there were always people who forced him to do it. He had already given this person a chance. Since he was looking for death, he would not hesitate to kill him. Murong-Yu naturally did not mind sending him on his way. Thus, Murong-Yu stepped forward. The surrounding people only saw a blur in front of their eyes, and Murong-Yu had already disappeared from where he stood. When he appeared again, he was already behind the rank 5 rebirth realm expert. Bang! Everyone watched as Murong-Yu's fist shot out. Before the rank 5 rebirth realm expert could react, Murong-Yu's fist had already landed on his head. The type 5 rebirth realm expert's head was instantly blasted apart, and even his soul was shattered. With a plop, the headless corpse fell to the ground. The surrounding people fell silent. Murong-Yu waved his hand in the air and kept the rank 5 rebirth state expert's origin tool and spatial treasure. Then, he glanced at the surrounding people indifferently. When they met Murong-Yu's gaze, the surrounding people could not help but take a step back. Only the rank 8 rebirth state experts who did not know what was going on remained indifferent. I'm a good person. I don't want to kill people. I hope you don't force me to, Murong-Yu said indifferently. Puffed. The surrounding people choked. This guy just killed someone, and now he's saying he's a good person? Doesn't want to kill people? However, after thinking about it, it seemed like Murong-Yu was right. It was indeed the rank 5 rebirth state expert who attacked first. Puffed. Everyone choked again. This was because they saw that the rank 5 rebirth state expert couldn't break the restriction after fiddling with it for half a day, but he couldn't stop Murong-Yu. The restriction seemed to have disappeared, and Murong-Yu's hand reached into the restriction and took out the sealed pill. What's going on? Everyone was stunned. Only the few high-level rebirth state experts who walked over from the weapons store shook their heads and left silently from the back door of the pill hall. With a freak like Murong-Yu here, these pills had nothing to do with them. Unless, of course, they killed Murong-Yu. However, after witnessing Murong-Yu's ferocious power, they didn't even have the intention to do so. After opening the lid, a thick pill fragrance wafted out from the bottle. Profound essence pill? Murong-Yu muttered to himself. He didn't recognize these pills, but there were words on the bottle. However, he knew that the profound essence pill was a rebirth state divine pill. It had immense power, and after consuming one pill, it could directly raise one's combat power by a small level. It was extremely precious. After hearing Murong-Yu's words, the surrounding people revealed looks of envy. This was a rebirth state divine pill. Imagine, if you couldn't defeat someone of the same level for a long time, but consumed a profound essence pill and suddenly raise your cultivation by a small level, wouldn't you be able to defeat your opponent immediately? This was a must-have pill for traveling and killing people. Some of them even had greedy looks in their eyes. However, after witnessing Murong-Yu's ferocious power, they didn't dare to make a move. However, they continued to break the restriction with full force. Unfortunately, even with the restriction seal, at least 30% of the pill's efficacy has been lost. Murong-Yu frowned and threw the pill into the Hichu Luo Shu. This pill had a slight effect on him. Although it wasn't much, it still had some effect. Moreover, even if he couldn't use it, Zhao Jiqing and the others could. After glancing around, Murong Yu walked towards the second restriction. Bang! However, before Murong Yu could make a move, a loud, muffled sound came from behind him. When Murong Yu turned his head, he saw a black figure flying away. It was a rebirth state expert who was testing the restriction that Murong Yu had used to take the profound essence pill. The restriction was still there and wasn't destroyed, so the unlucky guy was directly sent flying. When he saw Murong Yu standing in front of him and recalled Murong Yu's ferocious power, the rebirth state expert who was breaking the restriction couldn't help but sigh and leave. He didn't want to be killed by Murong Yu with a single punch like the rebirth state expert from before. Under the intimidation of the ferocious power, Murong Yu collected the pills one by one. However, these pills had been sealed for too long. Moreover, pills weren't origin weapons. After a long time, their medicinal power would naturally be depleted. Therefore, the best pills had only reached 80% medicinal power. Some of the pills had long since lost their medicinal efficacy and had turned into a pile of powder that was stored in the bottle. In less than half a day, Murong Yu had taken away all the pills in the restriction. However, at least half of the pills had lost their medicinal power. Even so, Murong Yu's harvest was extremely shocking. Murderous intent soared and filled the entire Great Hall of Bones. Murong Yu had collected all the pills, and the origin weapons in the first palace had probably been taken by him as well. Therefore, the treasures he had on him were extremely terrifying. Even the Lin family and the other families couldn't compare to Murong Yu. Therefore, many people wanted to kill him and steal his treasures. However, the powerful high-level rebirth state experts were a little hesitant and didn't dare to make a move. As for the low-level rebirth state experts, they didn't dare to make a move either. Do you want to make a move? If not, I'll leave. Murong Yu glanced at everyone and suddenly said, "Puffed." Everyone choked. Was this guy looking for a beating? However, Murong Yu definitely wasn't crazy. Therefore, there was only one possibility. He definitely had something to rely on. The more they guessed, the more they didn't dare to make a move. Murong Yu shook his head and left the hall with a disappointed expression. He wanted to have a big fight with those rank 8 rebirth state experts to test his strength. However, those people didn't offend him, so he couldn't find them. After the pill hall, there was another Great Hall of Bones. There were also some weapons sealed in this Great Hall of Bones. However, compared to the hundreds of origin weapons in the first Great Hall, there were too few sealed here. There were only a dozen. Origin weapons of the chaotic realm. Murong Yu's eyes lit up. Although these origin weapons were sealed, some of their aura still leaked out. They were extremely powerful, even more powerful than any rebirth state expert that Murong Yu had encountered. Therefore, he was sure that these origin weapons were all chaotic realm origin weapons. However, at this moment, there was a person in front of each chaotic void origin artifacts restriction, breaking the seal. All of them were existences at the 9th level of the rebirth realm. More than a dozen ancestors. Each of them contained surging power. Once unleashed, it would definitely be earth-shattering and destructive. He wondered if these patriarchs were the patriarchs who ruled over the giants of the Water Cloud planet, including the patriarchs of the Lin family. Murong Yu's gaze slowly swept past these ancestors and finally stopped on a young man. Noticing Murong Yu's gaze, the young man turned around. He was stunned at first, then slowly closed in on Murong Yu with a ferocious expression. "Murong Yu, I didn't expect you to appear here." "Very good." The young man slowly walked over with a murderous aura. Who else could it be but Lin Ling? A cold killing intent flashed through Murong Yu's eyes. Since Lin Ling was here, then the ancestors of the Lin family must be here too. It was a good opportunity to kill them all. Lin Ling was pleasantly surprised. After being scared away by Murong Yu that day, he had always wanted to return to the Holy World. However, before he could return, Master Shirgu's cave had appeared. Therefore, he had followed his family here. Originally, he had planned to bring his family's experts to destroy the Holy World after the trip to Master Shirgu's cave. However, He didn't expect Murong Yu to have already broken through rebirth and appeared here. It was a good opportunity to kill Murong Yu here. Chapter 1865. Murong Yu's pupils constricted. Lin Ling had already reached level 7 of the rebirth realm, as expected of the number 1 genius of the Lin clan's younger generation. His speed of improvement was terrifying. Of course, this was incomparable to Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu had reached level 7 of the rebirth realm after passing through rebirth realm. If it wasn't for his appetite being too big, Murong Yu would have already reached the chaotic void realm. On the other hand, the prize for advancing from the 7th rank to the 8th rank of the rebirth realm was an entire few hundred rebirth realm origin artifacts. If these origin treasures were given to the Lin clan would be able to sweep through the other clans and dominate the water cloud planet. However, Murong Yu did not believe that Lin Ling could refine items to increase his strength. This meant that the Lin clan had many treasures that could be used to increase Lin Ling's cultivation level. Of course, Lin Ling's talent could not be too bad. Otherwise, he would not have been able to increase his strength so quickly. Lin Ling quickly approached. However, he stopped in his tracks. His originally ferocious expression turned grave at this moment. He could not see through Murong Yu. There was only one possibility. Murong Yu's strength was higher than his. However, Murong Yu was only a 9-star sector lord not long ago. How could he be stronger than him? Even if he had passed through rebirth realm, wasn't he only at level 1 of the rebirth realm? Even if he was crazy enough to reach level 2 of the rebirth realm, how could he reach level 8 of the rebirth realm in such a short period of time? This kid must have some treasure to hide his cultivation level, Lin Ling thought to himself. The reason why he had fled back then was because Murong Yu was the ruler of the Holy World. In the Holy World, his cultivation level was suppressed. He was not Murong Yu's match at all. However, it was different now. Lin Ling, come back. Lin Ling's murderous look was seen by the surrounding people. Just as Lin Ling was about to attack, a level 9 rebirth realm ancestor from the Lin clan shouted. At the same time, this ancestor-level existence appeared in front of Murong Yu and stared coldly at Murong Yu. Naturally, he could see Murong Yu's cultivation level. He also knew that Lin Ling was no match for Murong Yu. On the other hand, Lin Ling was a genius of the Ling family who had the potential to break through to the chaos realm in the future. He would never allow Lin Ling to fall. "Old man, get out of my way," Murong Yu said in a gloomy voice as he glanced at the middle-aged man in front of him. Lin Zhang's face darkened. His appearance was that of a middle-aged man. Even in terms of age, how could he be considered an old man? When he was young, he was also one of the geniuses of the Lin family. His cultivation speed was extremely fast. In the age of a rebirth realm expert, he was only equivalent to a mortal in their 20s or 30s. How could he be called an old man like this? Ancestor Lin Jiang, this person has just broken through reincarnation not long ago. Before that, he was only a 9-star sector lord. He is the murderer of Lin Song. Lin Ling's voice rang in Lin Zhang's ears. He had broken through to rank 8 rebirth realm so quickly. If he was given a few more years, wouldn't he become a half-step chaos realm expert? Or even a chaos realm expert? If he became a chaos realm expert, who on the water cloud planet would be his match? By then, with his grudge with the Lin clan, he would definitely not let them off. This person could not be allowed to live. Lin Zhang's heart was filled with murderous intent. He suddenly reached out his hand and slammed it towards Murong Yu's head. A terrifying power erupted and instantly suppressed Murong Yu. Bang, bang, bang. Some of the low-level rebirth realm experts around Murong Yu could not withstand Lin Zhang's power and were sent flying. What's going on? Lin Zhang is going all out? Who is that young man? Sensing the terrifying power that Lin Zhang had unleashed, the old ancestors who were breaking the restrictions stopped and looked over at Murong Yu. Rank 8 rebirth realm? So young? When they saw Murong Yu, the ancestors were shocked. When one was a saint, it was equivalent to being immortal. After transcending reincarnation, one was truly immortal. Unless the galaxy was destroyed, the star region was annihilated, and the universe died. Otherwise, there was no limit to their lifespan. However, the older they were, the weaker their vitality would be. They would definitely not be as strong as the younger ones. However, Muronyu's current aura was like the sun in the sky. It was extremely exuberant. The younger and stronger one was, the more vigorous their vitality was. He could kill Lin Jiang in an instant. Haha, Lin Jiang, why are you so angry? Before Murong-yu could even react, an ancestor-level powerhouse had already appeared in front of him. The ancestor-level powerhouse threw a punch at Lin Jiang's attack. Bang! In the blink of an eye, the attacks of the two had already collided. Both of their figures swayed slightly before they stabilized themselves. As for the power they unleashed, it had already dissipated into the world. Their strength was on par. Murong-yu looked at the person who attacked. It was still a man, about 40 or 50 years old. Of course, this was only on the surface. His actual age might be countless reincarnation eras. He did not know any of these people. However, why would someone attack him? Murong-yu did not even need to think about it to know. This person must be one of the giants of the water cloud planet, or the ancestor of some other family. As the saying goes, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. Didn't the Lin family want to kill Murong-yu? If that was the case, they would save Murong-yu. Even if they could not touch the Lin family, they could at least annoy them. Therefore, this person attacked. As for Murong-yu, they would not even open their eyes to take a look. After all, Murong-yu is only a rank 8 rebirth state cultivator. Although there were not many rank 8 rebirth state cultivators in their family, there were definitely many of them. Wang Chuan, get out of my way. Lin Jiang looked at Wang Chuan with a dark expression, his killing intent soaring. Wang Chuan was an ancestor of the Wang family. His strength was similar to Lin Jiang's. Both of them were geniuses of the same generation and had been fighting since they were young. However, they had always been on par. The Wang family's power was not inferior to the Lin family's. Lin Jiang, did this little brother sleep with your woman? Why are you so angry that you want to kill him? I think this little brother is not bad. Wang Chuan laughed loudly, then turned to look at Murong-yu and asked, Little brother, are you interested in joining the Wang family? Murong-yu gave a non-committal smile and didn't reply. Wang Chuan did not react to this. After all, he only wanted to annoy Lin Jiang, not really recruit Murong-yu. Who knew if Murong-yu was a spy sent by the Lin family or other families? Perhaps this was their scheme. However, Lin Jiang's expression was extremely ugly. He took a step forward and looked at Wang Chuan with a cold and murderous expression. Get out of my way, or I'll kill you too. Wang Chuan was stunned. As an old rival, he knew Lin Jiang's character very well. Lin Jiang did not hesitate to fall out with him to kill Murong-yu. Who exactly was Murong-yu? Wang Chuan was finally interested in Murong-yu. The other ancestors were the same. They were all curious as to why Lin Jiang wanted to kill Murong-yu. Because of this curiosity, they decided to protect Murong-yu and not give Lin Jiang a chance to kill him. Lin Jiang's expression turned even uglier when he saw many ancestors surrounding him. These people were clearly trying to annoy him. Everyone, this person is the enemy of the Lin family. Whoever protects him will be the enemy of the Lin family. Therefore, I hope that everyone will not get involved in this mess. It won't do anyone any good, Lin Jiang said in a gloomy and murderous voice. If it were not for his lack of strength, he would have killed these people with a slap. Why would he waste so much time talking to them? Ha ha ha. Are the people of the Lin family all shameless? If it weren't for that trash called Lin Song from your family who wanted to kill my family, why would I kill him? If it weren't for that trash who wanted to kill my family, why would I take revenge on you? It's really a case of a thief crying thief. Shameless, shameless. Murong-yu came from the holy world, so the holy world could be considered his home. He was not wrong at all. However, the surrounding people were taken aback. This guy actually killed Lin Song. There was even an ancestor of a family who looked at Murong-yu strangely. One had to know that Lin Song was being hunted down by his family in the beginning, but he managed to escape in the end. They did not expect him to be killed by Murong-yu. This kid was really a good person. That ancestor chuckled in his heart. Today, I'm going to kill Lin Ling and destroy the Lin family. No one can stop me. Murong Yu roared and took a step forward to attack. Lin Zhang's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He reached out his hand and was about to attack Murong Yu. However, he was quickly stopped by Wang Chuan. Lin Jiang, these are the affairs of the younger generation. As seniors, it's not appropriate for us to interfere. We'll just watch from the side. Everyone, am I right? The other ancestors came closer and nodded with smiles. Lin Zhang's lungs were about to explode. Although Lin Ling was a genius, he was definitely not as strong as Murong Yu. These people wanted Lin Ling to die. However, there were dozens of powerhouses around him who were on the same level as him, eyeing him covetously. He did not dare to make a move at all. Even if those people did not dare to kill him, stopping him would be a piece of cake. When Murong Yu killed Lin Ling, they could say that it had nothing to do with them. It was Murong Yu who killed Lin Ling in the first place. What did it have to do with them? So what if the Lin family was furious? Would he dare to start a war with all of their families? If that was the case, the Lin family would not be far from destruction. However, how could Lin Jiang allow Lin Ling to die? Therefore, he let out a long howl. He could not stop it, but the Lin family still needed the other ancestors. When Lin Jiang let out a long howl, Murong Yu had already bypassed him and pounced on Lin Ling. The Lin family could survive, but Lin Ling must die. Chapter 1866. When he recalled how Lin Ling had tortured Murong Xian and the others, Murong Yu felt as if a knife had pierced his heart. Therefore, Lin Ling was someone he had to kill. Not to mention that he was just a genius of the Lin family. Even if he was a genius from a family with a Chaos Realm expert or a family with a higher cultivation realm, he would still kill him without hesitation. As a genius, Lin Ling was naturally proud and arrogant. Lin Ling did not retreat in the face of Murong Yu's attack. Instead, he charged forward. However, his ancestors had said that he was not as good as Murong Yu. He had never thought that he was inferior to Murong Yu. Without the backing of the holy world, Murong Yu was nothing. He looked down on people like Murong Yu who came from a small place. He was just an ant. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the fists of the two men collided in the void. After an earth-shattering explosion, Lin Ling's fist was blasted into a bloody mist. On the other hand, Murong Yu's fist was not damaged at all. It did not even pause. The difference between a Rebirth Realm rank 8 and rank 7 was that great. Lin Ling was not an ordinary rank 7 Rebirth Realm expert. However, Murong Yu was not an ordinary rank 8 Rebirth Realm expert either. The difference between the two was still huge. Murong Yu's fist charged straight towards Lin Ling at lightning speed. At that moment, Lin Ling's heart was suddenly enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. Lin Ling was instantly shocked. With a thought, he had already retreated. However, no matter how fast he was, Murong Yu was even faster. However, while he was retreating, Lin Ling had already made other reactions. With his swoosh, a ray of light shot out from Lin Ling's body and floated above his head. Boom! An extremely terrifying power exploded. With Lin Ling's body as the center, it quickly spread in all directions. Bang! 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 Apart from the old ancestors, most of the people in the vicinity were directly shocked by this terrifying aura and were forced to retreat. Some of the weaker ones even fainted from the terrifying aura. Murong Yu was the first to bear the brunt. Under the impact of this terrifying aura, his attack, which was originally aimed at Lin Ling, immediately seemed to have entered a quagmire. The resistance became greater and greater, and the speed of his advance became slower and slower. "A chaotic space realm Yuan artifact," exclaimed one of the patriarchs. His eyes were filled with greed as he looked at the Yuan artifact above Lin Ling's head. The other patriarchs, including Murong Yu, all looked at Lin Ling's head. Puff! Murong Yu spat out blood the moment he saw the chaotic space realm origin artifact. Along with him, several other patriarchs were also spat out. Seeing the reaction of Murong Yu and the others, Lin Ling's face turned sour. This chaotic space realm origin artifact was his trump card, and its power was extremely terrifying. Originally, he was not willing to expose it. However, he had no choice. Muronyu was too powerful. If he did not use this chaotic space realm origin artifact, he would definitely die. However, this chaotic space realm origin artifact did make him blush. Because it was a pink doo-doo. It was unknown which female expert in ancient times had used it as a personal weapon, but she had refined it into a chaotic space realm origin artifact. It's actually a doo-doo, and it's pink. Ha! Muronyu laughed out loud. A few of the other old ancestors also laughed out loud. They were all amused by Lin Ling. Lin Ling's face was red as he looked at Muronyu with murderous intent. So what if it's a doo-doo? I'll kill you today. As he spoke, his mind moved. Immediately, the pink doo-doo expanded with the wind and instantly became the size of a small mountain. Then, it turned into a pink stream of light and suppressed Muronyu. Although Muronyu was laughing out loud, it did not mean that he looked down on the pink doo-doo. After all, the pink doo-doo was a chaotic space realm origin artifact, and its power was terrifying. However, that was all there was to it. He didn't make any other reaction. He just threw a punch at it. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, a powerful force surged into Murongyu's fist and instantly shattered it. On the other hand, the pink undergarment didn't stop at all and continued to attack. Muronyu was shocked. Without the slightest hesitation, he retreated. You overestimate yourself. Lin Ling sneered in his heart when he saw Muronyu actually daring to use his fist to block the pink doo-doo. No matter how powerful Muronyu was, he was only a rebirth realm expert. How could he withstand the attack of the pink doo-doo? Under his control, the pink doo-doo could already erupt with the power of a half-step chaotic space realm expert. Although every moment consumed a lot of his energy, it would be worth it if he could kill Muronyu. While Muronyu retreated, Lin Ling also slapped a few elixirs into his mouth. These were elixirs to replenish his origin chi. He had no choice. Although the pink doo-doo was powerful, it also consumed a lot of energy. As he retreated, Muronyu made a grabbing motion in the air. In the next instant, the high-ranked rebirth grade Yuan Qi that he had obtained from Shi Qing appeared in his hand. Immense power surged from his palm into the long spear. The long spear suddenly erupted into balls of black light. Kill! Without any moves, he stabbed with the spear. Boom! Muronyu was once again sent flying. Even the web between his thumb and forefinger was shattered by the huge force. However, that was all. He was not injured. However, the pink doo-doo was successfully blocked by Muronyu. A chaotic space realm origin chi is just so. Muronyu roared and charged at Lin Ling with the long spear in his hand. Lin Ling was furious. He controlled the pink doo-doo to attack Muronyu. Thus, a huge battle began. However, Lin Ling could not hold on for long. Although the pink doo-doo could erupt with the power of a half-step chaotic space realm expert, it could not kill Muronyu. One could only imagine how terrifying Murongyu's strength was. In fact, Muronyu had already unleashed the full power of the long spear in his hand. Its power was close to that of a peak rebirth realm expert. Although the pink doo-doo was a chaotic space realm origin chi, how much power could Lin Ling unleash from it? Although Muronyu was sent flying every time they collided with each other. However, Muronyu was not injured at all. Lin Ling and the pink doo-doo had recognized each other as its master. Although he had the upper hand every time they collided, but every time his mind would be battered to the point of being confused. His strength was rapidly being depleted. Even with elixirs, it could not be replenished. Finally, after one collision, Lin Ling could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. The shock to his mind was too great. If this continued, his mind would definitely be severely injured or even shattered. Trash. So what if you have a chaotic space realm origin chi? You're still no match for me. Muronyu laughed and attacked his opponent psychologically. Lin Ling's expression turned even uglier. However, this was also the truth. Even if he used a chaotic space realm origin chi, he could not kill Muronyu. In fact, he could not even injure Murong slightly, let alone kill him. Of course, this was his reason. If it was someone else who could fully unleash the power of the pink doo-doo, Murong would have to flee unless he used a weapon fragment. Even if he used a weapon fragment, he was limited by his own strength. Whether or not he could withstand it was a problem. Boom! Murong held the spear with both hands and sent the pink doo-doo flying. Then he took a few steps forward and grabbed the pink doo-doo with his big hand. Yes, this kid wants to snatch the pink doo-doo. The many patriarchs were shocked, but no one made a move. After all, they did not think that Murong could snatch the pink doo-doo. Lin Jiang wanted to make a move, but he could, under the suppression of the many patriarchs. He could not make a move at all. It had been a long time since he let out a long howl, but he did not see the other patriarchs of the Lin family. He could not help but feel a little depressed. Swoosh! It was soft to the touch, as expected of a woman's underwear. That was the first feeling Murong had when he grabbed the pink doo-doo. Lin Ling's killing intent surged as he controlled the pink doo-doo in a frenzy, wanting to kill Murong. However, in the next moment, the pink doo-doo in Murong hand suddenly disappeared. He had actually kept it in the Hichu Luo shoe. Lin Ling spat out a mouthful of blood. He could still feel the existence of the pink doo-doo. His connection with the pink doo-doo was still there. However, he soon felt that the pink doo-doo was being suppressed. What could suppress a chaotic void realm essence artifact? Lin Ling was not the only one who was shocked. Even the patriarchs beside him were shocked. All of them looked at Murong with evil intentions. Although it was a little embarrassing to take out the pink doo-doo, it was a chaotic void realm essence artifact. All of them coveted this treasure. It was just that when it was in Lin Ling's hands, they were too embarrassed to snatch it. However, when it came to Murong, they didn't have such concerns. They would kill Murong and snatch the pink doo-doo. By then, even the Lin family would not be able to do anything to them. Yes, they would wait until Murong killed Lin Ling before making a move. All the patriarchs' eyes flickered with cold light as they made up their minds. Lin Ling, now that the pink doo-doo is gone, do you still have any chaotic void realm treasures such as pink underwear? Take them all out. Murong held the long spear in his hand and approached Lin Ling step by step. Lin Ling's face was extremely red. Murong's words were an insult to him. However, if the pink doo-doo was suppressed, how could he be Murong's match? Therefore, his figure flashed, and he flew toward the exit at the back of the main hall. He had actually fled without a fight. A cold, murderous intent flashed in one of the patriarch's eyes as he secretly released a force. As a result, Lin Ling's figure was slightly slowed down. A smile suddenly appeared on Murong's face as he cupped his fists at the patriarch. "Thank you for your help, senior." The patriarch's face instantly darkened. Wasn't this fellow deliberately trying to drag him down? Sure enough, Lin Jiang was already glaring at him, as if he wanted to eat him alive. Chapter 1867. Scammer. The great ancestor even wanted to kill Murong. If he helped Murong, it would be fine as long as everyone had a tacit understanding. That way, Murong would have a chance to kill Lin Ling. At that time, the Lin family would not be able to settle the score with him. However, now that Murong said it, it was a scam. Whether or not Murong killed Lin Ling, the Lin family would definitely settle the score with him. Murong sneered in his heart. He had experienced a lot since he cultivated from a mortal to the rebirth state. These great ancestor-level experts did not even have 1/10,000th of what he had experienced. Therefore, Murong could tell whether these ancestors were defecating or farting when they raised their butts. "Want to steal my treasure? Then I'll drag them all down with me." As he spoke, Murong didn't slow down at all. In a flash, he was already in front of Lin Ling Bang. The gigantic fist contained terrifying power as it slammed into Lin Ling's body. Lin Ling was only in the 7th level of the rebirth state. How could he block Murong's attack? Moreover, his chaotic void realm yuan artifact had already been suppressed by Murong. Therefore, Lin Ling was directly blown up by Murong's punch. He turned into a cloud of blood and dissipated into the air. The number 1 genius of the Lin family's younger generation, Lin Ling, was dead. Kid, you're too cruel. It's fine for people of the same generation to spar with each other, but you can't kill. A cruel person like you will only do evil if you stay in this world. I won't tolerate it. I'll kill you today. After Murong, you killed Lin Ling with a single punch. The old ancestor who had helped Murong you earlier immediately shouted with a strong sense of righteousness. At the same time, he reached out his hand and grabbed Murong you. Shameless, shameless. Hearing the great ancestor's words, the others could not help but feel embarrassed for him. He actually found such a dignified reason to kill someone. Indeed, the longer one lived, the more shameless one became. However, no one dared to expose him. This was because the other ancestors also wanted to kill Murong Yu. Although there were many chaotic void realm origin weapons in the Whitebone Hall, they realized that they could not break the restrictions within them. On the other hand, Murong Yu managed to snatch a pink doo-doo from Lin Ling. This was a high-grade chaotic void realm yuan artifact. If they could control it, who below the chaotic void realm would be a match for them? When that time came, he would definitely be able to do as he pleased on Watercloud Planet. Therefore, over a dozen 9-stage rebirth realm ancestors had taken action. Each and every one of them exploded with terrifying power, violently vibrating towards Murong Yu, intending to crush Murong Yu. After witnessing Murong Yu's battle prowess, all the patriarchs attacked with all their might. None of them held back. First, kill Murong Yu, then take the pink doo-doo. Hurry up and leave this place. The expressions of the other rebirth realm experts changed drastically when they saw the battle between the ancestor-level experts. All of them immediately retreated. The aftershocks of the ancestors' power could kill them. If they were accidentally caught in the shock waves, it would be a tragedy for them. Therefore, they did not dare to stay here. A bunch of shameless people. Murong Yu sneered. Because he had already expected these people to make a move, he was not angry because of this. Your stupidity will get you killed in the end, Murong Yu said coldly. However, he did not take the attacks head-on. Instead, he shot to the side. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Wherever Murong Yu passed, the sealed chaotic void realm origin weapons disappeared into thin air. They were taken by Murong Yu. This brat is actually able to collect these origin tools. The old ancestors chasing after Murong Yu were all shocked. All of them looked as if they had seen something unbelievable. We can't break these seals at all. This kid can actually take out the Yuan artifacts through the seals. Why don't we wait for him to take out all the Yuan artifacts before killing him? An old ancestor's spiritual sense quickly spread out to the other old ancestors, conveying his idea. That would be great. The other patriarchs immediately came to an agreement. Even Lin Jiang was the same. Lin Jiang was determined to kill Murong Yu to avenge Lin Ling's death. However, before killing Murong Yu, he had to maximize the benefits. As a result, everyone's attacks became more bark than bite. Although it looked mighty, it actually didn't have much power. At first, Murong Yu did not understand what these shameless people were trying to do. However, he soon realized what they were trying to do. Then he sneered in his heart. These shameless people. If I get all the chaotic void realm origin weapons, all of you will die. Therefore, Murong Yu's speed wasn't slow at all. One by one, the origin weapons disappeared before the ancestors' eyes. With every item that disappeared, the greed on the faces of these patriarchs became more intense. This was because these origin weapons might all become theirs in the end. There were only a dozen or so chaotic void realm origin tools. Murong Yu's figure flickered as he collected all of them. Haha, shameless ancestors. I'm not going to play with you anymore. When I appear again, it will be the time of your death. After taking the last chaotic void realm origin weapon, Murong Yu entered the Hichu Luo Shu and teleported to a palace in front of him. Disappeared? Lin Jiang and the others' jaws dropped to the ground because they did not realize how Murong Yu had disappeared. They had nothing now that Murong Yu had disappeared. Therefore, the ancestors' faces were as ugly as if their entire family had died. We should have killed that brat long ago. One of the ancestors glared at the ancestor who had suggested not to kill Murong Yu first. That ancestor was furious. Bastard, I was only suggesting it. If you don't agree, you can do it yourself. Murderous intent surged and swords were drawn. However, these patriarchs were all top-tier experts on Aqua Cloud Planet. They were merely engaging in a war of words. They wouldn't actually start a war. Even if they did, they would only fight for a while and would not kill each other. In fact, it was easy for them to defeat each other, but difficult to kill. Of course, they did not take Murong Yu's words to heart. He was only a rank 8 rebirth realm cultivator. How could he kill them? They had been in this realm for countless years. However, if they knew that Murong Yu was only a rank 7 rebirth realm cultivator before entering the tomb, would they still be so calm? In the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong Yu suppressed his killing intent. These ancestors were really shameless. During the battle, he had wanted to use his weapon fragments to kill them more than once. However, he resisted in the end. I'll increase my strength first, then kill them one by one. Murong Yu murmured murderously. Then, he calmly began to refine the chaotic space realm origin artifacts he had obtained. Most of these origin artifacts were low-level chaotic space realm origin artifacts. However, even the trashiest chaotic space realm origin artifacts contain more power than most rebirth realm origin artifacts. The pink doo-doo he had obtained from Lin Ling was the highest level origin artifact. Murong Yu looked at the row of less than 20 chaotic void realm yuan artifacts in front of him and thought to himself, after refining these yuan artifacts, I should be able to raise my cultivation to rank 9 reincarnation realm. However, I should not be able to break through to the chaotic space realm. As he pondered, Murong Yu threw the chaotic void boundary yuan artifact into the primal chaos furnace. This time, he did not intend to leave any chaotic space realm origin artifact for Zhao, Jiqing, and the others. One reason was that Zhao, Jiqing, and the others were still weak. Even if he gave them the chaotic space realm origin artifacts, they would not be able to unleash any power. Moreover, it was more important to increase Murong Yu's strength now. By the time Zhao, Jiqing, and the others could unleash the power of chaotic space realm origin artifacts, Murong Yu might have already surpassed the chaotic space realm. By then, wouldn't it be easy to obtain a few chaotic space realm origin artifacts? One by one, the chaotic space realm origin artifacts were refined. Murong Yu's strength continued to increase. When he refined all the chaotic void realm origin artifacts except for the pink doo-doo, he finally broke through to the 9th level of the rebirth realm and became an ancestor of the water cloud planet. His strength had increased by at least 100 times. Now, Murong Yu was confident that he could easily kill Lin Jiang and the others. However, Murong Yu was not happy because of this. Although his appetite was unusually large, Murong Yu had originally thought that the dozen or so chaotic space realm origin artifacts would push his strength to the peak of the rebirth realm. Who would have thought that it would only help him break through to rank 9 rebirth realm? This was far from good. Even Master Shirgu only had a dozen or so chaotic space realm origin artifacts. How many chaotic space realm origin artifacts were there in the entire water cloud planet? Even if Murong Yu swept through the entire water cloud planet, how many chaotic space realm origin artifacts could he obtain? Without more than 100, Murong Yu would not be able to break through to the chaotic space realm. Moreover, Murong Yu had a vague feeling that the power of more than 100 chaotic space realm origin artifacts would be able to help him break through to the chaotic space realm. As his strength continued to increase, his appetite grew bigger and bigger. It was becoming more and more perverted. Even if he was lucky enough to break through to the chaotic space realm on Water Cloud Planet, how would he break through to the next realm? However, Murong Yu did not intend to stay on a Yuan planet for long. After settling the matter with the Lin family, he would leave the Water Cloud Planet. Now it's time to settle the score with those patriarchs. Murong Yu stood up with a murderous look on his face. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. When he reappeared, Murong Yu was already in the main hall where the chaotic space realm origin artifacts were sealed. However, there was no one in the main hall. Everyone should have left the main hall and gone to the main hall at the back. Murong Yu did not hesitate and immediately left the main hall. Indeed, there was another main hall at the back. If Moron, you guessed correctly, elixirs should be stored in this main hall. Moreover, they were chaotic space realm elixirs. Chapter 1868. When Moron Yu stepped into the hall, he realized that he had guessed correctly. Elixirs were sealed here. Moreover, the number of elixirs seemed to be more than the number of chaotic void realm origin artifacts. At a glance, there should be about 20 to 30 sealed elixirs. At that moment, there were many patriarch-level people burying their heads and cracking the seals. Some of the patriarchs exuded auras that were much stronger than Lin Zhang's. These people were probably the true patriarchs of clans like the Lin family. Half-step chaotic void realm existences. Moron Yu secretly calculated and realized that with his strength, he should be able to resist these half-step chaotic void realm experts. As for the patriarchs below the half-step chaotic void realm, Moron Yu intended to kill them. Of course, this excluded those with trump cards like Lin Ling. When they saw Moron Yu enter, most of them looked over. "Brat, you actually dare to appear here." Lin Jiang strode over with a ferocious expression. Murderous intent surged. However, his footsteps did not stop very soon. He was shocked to discover that Moron Yu's cultivation level had risen to Rebirth Realm level 9, the same cultivation level as him. Moreover, Moron Yu's aura was rather obscure and contained an extremely terrifying power. Once it erupted, it would definitely sweep through the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Like the previous Rebirth Realm experts, Lin Jiang and the other patriarchs were shocked when they saw Moron Yu's cultivation level. Those rank 8 Rebirth Realm experts were so frightened that their faces turned green. In less than a few days, Moron Yu's cultivation had already increased by leaps and bounds. From Rebirth Realm level 7 to Rebirth Realm level 8, and now level 9. This breakthrough did not seem to require any cultivation at all. It was as if he could break through at will. As for the so-called super geniuses on the water cloud planet, which one of them did not need a long time to break through a small realm? In front of Moron Yu, they were simply a pile of shit. Who knew when this guy would break through to the chaotic void realm? It had been many years since a chaotic void realm expert had appeared on the water cloud planet. Some people began to look forward to it. In any case, they were already numb from the shock of Moron Yu's breakthrough speed. There was nothing to be shocked about anymore. "Brat, are you the one who killed Lin Ling?" After Lin Jiang stopped, an old man who seemed to be the ancestor of the Lin clan stopped breaking the restriction on his hand and turned his head to look at Moron Yu with a murderous look. Except for Moron Yu, everyone else knew this person. This person was the strongest ancestor of the Lin family, Lin Xiongshi. His strength had already reached the pinnacle of the Rebirth Realm, making him a half-step chaotic void realm existence. However, due to the great battle a reincarnation cycle ago, the entire planet had been destroyed. It was said that the Water Cloud Star was a 2-star star at that time. However, the great battle back then had almost destroyed the Water Cloud planet. It had actually reduced the Water Cloud planet from a 2-yuan star to a 1-yuan star. The Heaven-Earth Essence energy on a yuan planet was no longer enough to produce Chaos Realm experts. As a result, even though these people were only half a step away from breaking through, they could only remain stagnant. If they had gone to other 2-yuan stars, they might have been able to break through to the Chaos Realm in a short time. However, there was a saying that it was better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a cow. In a small place like the Water Cloud planet, they were the absolute rulers, second only to one person and above tens of thousands of people. They ruled the entire Water Cloud planet, and no one could shake their position. If they had gone to a more powerful planet, they might have been considered a little genius given their aptitude. However, this world had never lacked geniuses. In the end, they would only fade into the crowd or even fall to the lowest level of existence. The difference in status was too great. Moreover, once they reached the Rebirth Realm, they did not have to worry about longevity. They were immortal and indestructible. Why would they give up their current glory and fall to the lowest level of existence? Therefore, people like Lin Xiongshi had no intention of leaving the water cloud planet. However, their pursuit of power was also very strong. Therefore, when Master Shirgu's cave abode had appeared, they had personally led the experts of their clans into it. They had a special method to enter first. They did not stop at the main halls in front of them. They did not even stop at the palace that sealed the chaotic void realm origin treasures. Although those treasures were precious, they could not break those restrictions. Even if they could, it would take a lot of time. Most importantly, those treasures could not help them break through to the chaotic void realm. However, chaotic space realm pills were a different story. Some of those pills could help them break through to the next realm. That was why they had stopped here and were all trying their best to break the restrictions. After many days of breaking the restrictions, some of the patriarchs were almost done. However, according to their progress, they would still need a few more days to break the restrictions. However, these patriarchs had already made an agreement. Whoever broke the restrictions would own the pills. Others could not snatch them away. Otherwise, they would become public enemies. This was everyone's idea. Otherwise, wouldn't he be very sad and indignant if someone snatched it after he worked so hard to decipher it? Who do you think you are? Lin Xiongshir's tone was unpleasant. Murongyu's tone was even worse. As the saying went, speak human language to humans, speak ghost language to ghosts. Since they were going to fight in the end, Murongyu could not be bothered to be polite with them. Lin Xiongshi was so angry that his beard stood up. A terrifying killing intent spread out from his body and instantly covered the entire main hall. Most people could not help but shudder. The killing intent caused the temperature in the main hall to drop. However, Murongyu, who bore the brunt of it, did not change at all. He was also a rank 9 reincarnation realm expert and was very powerful. He was not afraid of Lin Xiongshir's pressure at all. Who is this kid? He's actually so daring as to call Master Lin a thing? The surrounding people looked at Murongyu in astonishment. Their eyes filled with astonishment. I'm not a thing. I am Lin Xiongshi, the patriarch of the Lin family. Little bastard, kill yourself. Lin Xiongshi said angrily. However, before he could finish his sentence, he sensed that everyone around him was looking at him in astonishment. He was stunned at first, but then he reacted. He actually admitted that he was not a thing. Little bastard, I'll kill you. Lin Xiongshi was enraged. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Murongyu. Then, he threw out a punch. At that moment, the other patriarchs of the other families had stopped breaking the restrictions. This was because they already knew that Murongyu had collected more than a dozen chaotic realm origin artifacts. They were all waiting for an opportunity. Once Lin Xiongshi killed Murongyu, they would immediately make a move to snatch it. Those were chaotic realm origin artifacts. Seeing Lin Xiongshi, a half-step chaotic realm expert, punch him, Murongyu was filled with pride. He roared and did not dodge. Instead, he threw a punch. Everyone who saw this scene, especially the patriarchs, could not help but smile disdainfully. Did Murongyu really think he was a big shot? Although a rank 9 reincarnation realm expert and a half-step chaotic realm expert were only rank 9 reincarnation realm experts, the difference between them was huge. What was the difference between a chaotic realm and a reincarnation realm expert? Not only was one's cultivation realm higher, but one's strength was also stronger. Most importantly, a chaotic realm expert could already control the laws of space. Laws under the heavens. Although one's strength was great, laws were even more superior to strength. The stronger the power of laws one comprehended, the more terrifying one's combat strength would be. Although a half-step chaotic realm expert could not fully comprehend the power of space laws, he had already begun to come into contact with them. Whether it was in terms of speed or attack, an ordinary rank 9 reincarnation realm expert could not compare to him. Boom! In a flash, Murongyu and Lin Xiongshi had already exchanged a blow. Both of them trembled slightly, but neither of them retreated even half a step. The two of them were actually evenly matched. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people could not help but be shocked. This black-clothed young man was definitely not from any of the wealthy families on the Water Cloud planet. Did that mean he was from another planet? If that was the case, it would not be surprising that he was stronger than Lin Xiongshi. But what if he was not? With his strength, wouldn't there be another wealthy family on the Water Cloud planet in the future that would compete with the Lin family and other family for benefits? Thinking of this, a cold, killing intent flashed across the eyes of the patriarchs of the other families. The benefits they had obtained were not enough, and they would not allow it to be divided among them. Kill. This thought appeared in their minds at the same time. However, they did not act for the time being. This was because they did not think that Murong Yu was a match for Lin Xiongshi. Once the laws were used, who could be a match for him? Lin Xiongxi's expression was somewhat gloomy. Although he had not used his full strength in this punch, who knew? This was a great loss of face. Kid, you're not bad, but you should not have offended the Lin family. If you offend the Lin clan, you will die without a proper burial ground. You can die now. Lin Xiongshi roared and attacked again. Spatial cut. A wave of spatial power rippled out, cutting through the void. If Murong Yu was hit, his body would definitely be cut apart. However, the power of the laws was too weak. Playing with the laws of space in front of Murong Yu was simply displaying one slight skill in front of an expert. Therefore, Murong Yu took a step forward and dodged his opponent's spatial cut. At the same time, Murong Yu waved his hand, and a wave of spatial power rippled out. Swoosh! A huge saber formed by spatial power slashed through the void and viciously slashed towards Lin Xiongshi. Spatial power. Seeing this scene, everyone, including Lin Xiongshi, exclaimed in shock. Murong Yu's spatial power was much stronger than Lin Xiongxi's. If Murong Yu's spatial power was compared to a torrent, Lin Xiongxi's spatial power was like a small spring that could not be any smaller. Moreover, it was the kind that dripped from the mountains intermittent. Could he be a chaotic realm expert? The patriarch's expressions changed drastically. Chapter 1869. They were talking about chaotic void realm experts. A battle between chaotic void realm experts from a reincarnation era had almost destroyed the Water Cloud planet. Moreover, the Yuan planet was billions of times more powerful than an ordinary planet in terms of mass. If such a planet had been destroyed, one could imagine how terrifying a chaotic void realm expert was. And now, a chaotic space realm expert was standing right in front of them. Yet, they had shown their killing intent towards him. This was simply courting death. At the thought of this, everyone's backs could not help but be soaked in cold sweat. So the patriarchs could not help but retreat. In the face of Murong Yu, a chaotic void realm existence, although he had not unleashed the power of the chaotic void realm, the 3 words chaotic void realm were enough to scare a large number of people to death. Murong Yu only felt that it was strange that the many patriarchs were enveloped in killing intent, and then all the killing intent disappeared in an instant. He really did not know what these people were thinking. Moreover, he had no understanding of the abilities of a chaotic void realm expert. Therefore, he did not know that these patriarchs had mistaken him for a chaotic void realm expert. Senior, if we've offended you, please forgive us. An ancestor of the Wang family stepped forward and bowed to Murong Yu in a respectful manner. Seeing this scene, the jaws of the surrounding people who did not know what was going on dropped to the ground. What was going on? They had been shouting about killing him earlier, but now they were respectful? Could it be that this person had a powerful background? They did not dare to offend him? However, even if he had a powerful background, the Wang family patriarch would not go so far as to call him senior. Only those who were stronger than them would call him that. The Wang family patriarch was a half-step chaotic void realm existence. Could this black-clothed young man be a chaotic void realm expert? Chaotic void realm. The surrounding people looked at Murong Yu with admiration, wishing they could rush up and hug Murong Yu's thigh to beg him to accept them as his disciple. Murong Yu was also dumbfounded by the Wang family patriarch. He was only at Rebirth Realm level 9, and was thousands of miles away from the Rebirth Realm. How could he be a chaotic void realm expert? Could it be because of the power of space? Murong Yu quickly realized that something was wrong. These people's expressions changed the moment he unleashed the power of space. Lin Xiongshir's face was extremely gloomy, as if his entire family had died. If Murong Yu was really a Chaos Realm existence, the Lin family would definitely disappear. Patriarch, how can he be a Chaos Realm expert? Previously, he was only at level 7 of the Rebirth stage. He has only recently advanced to level 9 of the Rebirth stage. Don't be deceived by him. Lin Jiang growled with a ferocious expression. He absolutely did not believe that Murong Yu was a chaotic realm expert. After all, he was only in the Rebirth realm now. It was just that he had used some unknown method to learn the law of space. That's right. He's definitely not a chaotic void realm expert. Although his spatial energy is vast, it is not that powerful. It only has the form, but not the spirit. Lin Xiongshi also shouted. Although Murong Yu's space force was many times more vast than his, its power was only a few times stronger. It was purely dependent on quantity. Moreover, he felt that the spatial energy was of a lower level. It seemed to be the spatial energy of a low-level world. It was far inferior to the spatial energy of this world. In reality, Lin Xiongshir's suspicion was not wrong. Murong Yu's spatial energy was only at the level of the people of the sacred world. After coming to the water cloud planet, he had not communicated with this world. Otherwise, he would have killed Lin Xiongshi long ago with his terrifying spatial energy. However, Lin Xiongshir's words had successfully inspired Murong Yu. The Chaos Realm was stronger than the Rebirth Realm, not only in terms of strength, but also in terms of the comprehension of the law of space. Murong Yu, on the other hand, had comprehended the law of space, which was hundreds of millions of times stronger than the law of space. If he could control the spatial energy of this world, his battle prowess would soar. By then, he would be able to contend against the Chaos Realm expert. Of course, this was a contest of spatial energy. If the spatial energy was equal to that of a Chaos Realm expert, Murong Yu would still lose in the end. This was because his strength was still far inferior to that of a Chaos Realm expert. Of course, if Murong Yu's spatial energy was more impressive than his opponent's spatial energy, he would be able to kill a Chaos Realm cultivator who was an entire realm above him. Zai Technique. With a thought, Murong Yu immediately activated the Zai Technique. Boom! Just as he was about to activate the Presence Technique, the space around him seemed to have gone berserk. Spatial energy, invisible to the naked eye, surged towards Murong Yu like a torrential flood. At that moment, Murong Yu felt as if he had fused with the surrounding void. He was the space, and the space was him. He could use the power of this space at will, and could even travel through it at will. Travel. This was the so-called teleportation, right? He could instantly appear wherever his thoughts went. Spatial slash. Murong Yu roared in his heart and slashed at Lin Xiongshi with a finger. At that moment, a look of horror appeared on Lin Xiongshir's face. This was because his heart was shrouded by an extremely strong aura of death. With a thought, he retreated explosively. The moment he retreated, the void he was in was slashed into pieces. If he hadn't left, his body would have been chopped into pieces just like that space. This kid has such a strong comprehension ability. He's not in the Chaos Realm, but he has a complete spatial energy. He must have cultivated a cultivation technique related to the spatial energy or obtained an expert's inheritance. If I can obtain it and cross-reference it, I might be able to advance to the Chaos Realm. Lin Xiongshi thought as a cold light flashed in his eyes. For a Rebirth Realm expert to break through to the Chaos Realm, there were at least two aspects that needed to be met. One was naturally the accumulation of power. If one did not have enough power, they would not be able to break through. The more important aspect was the comprehension of the law of space. Even if a person had enough power or even surpassed it, they would still not be able to break through if they did not have any achievements in the spatial energy. The opposite was also true. Currently, many of the patriarchs on the Water Cloud Star had not achieved either aspect, so no one had been able to break through. The Wang family patriarch's expression was extremely ugly. At that moment, they were certain that Murong Yu was not a Chaos Realm expert, and the Wang family patriarch's expression just now, was embarrassing. Kid, you deserve to die. The Wong family patriarch flew into a rage out of humiliation and was the first to attack after Lin Xiongshi. He unleashed his spatial force and slashed at Murongyu. Looking at the spatial energy that was full of holes, Murongyu sneered. The spatial energy seemed to have been pieced together. Although it was somewhat powerful, it was completely vulnerable. With a point of his finger, a strand of spatial energy the size of a strand of hair quickly slashed at the Wong family patriarch's spatial energy. With a poof, the Wong family patriarch's spatial energy exploded. On the other hand, Murongyu's spatial energy was not damaged at all. The gap was just that big. The Wong family patriarch was stunned, and so were the other patriarchs. They were all half-step chaos realm existences, and their spatial energy was similar. In other words, if it were them, they would have suffered the same fate. The others' hearts skipped a beat. When they were fighting just now, although there was no dazzling battle, everyone's hearts were enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. If they were the target of Murongyu and Lin Xiongshi's attack, they would have died without a doubt. While everyone was shocked, Murongyu was a little depressed. He could now use the Zai technique without any hindrance and communicate with this space. However, he could not use too much of the spatial energy. This was because the space in this world was countless times stronger than the space in the Saint's world. The spatial energy was even more terrifying. If he wanted to use the spatial energy, he had to compress the spatial energy in his body. However, Murongyu's strength and body could not withstand too much spatial energy. Otherwise, he would be shattered into dust. Even his soul would be shattered. Of course, there was another way to use the spatial energy, which was to directly borrow the surrounding spatial energy to attack. However, Murongyu could not do that for the time being. This was because he could only communicate with a small area of space nearby. However, he believed that sooner or later, he would be able to control the spatial energy outside. Seeing the depressed look on Murongyu's face, the Wong family ancestor and the others could not help but vomit blood. What kind of expression was that? It was as if he was very dissatisfied. You want to kill me? Murongyu's eyes flashed with a cold light as he slowly scanned the faces of the Wong family ancestor and the others. No one said anything, but they all took a step forward. The answer was self-evident. Murongyu was only at Rebirth Realm Level 9. How could he use such powerful spatial energy? They all wanted to know because they all wanted to become chaotic realm experts. Very well. Your stupidity today will cause the fall of your family. Today, I will send you on your way. Murongyu roared and took a step forward, charging towards Lin Xiongshi. Spatial cut. Spatial storm. The battle skills derived from the Zai technique were still suitable here. Moreover, they erupted with terrifying power. In an instant, a terrifying spatial pressure shook the entire Great Hall of Bones. Under the terrifying pressure, other than the half-step chaotic realm ancestors, everyone else ran away in an instant. The power was too terrifying. Even if they were swept by the shockwaves, they would be killed. Let's join forces and suppress him. Lin Xiongshi roared and erupted with terrifying power. He stretched out his hand and attacked Murongyu. At the same time, the Wong family ancestor and the others also launched their strongest attacks. Murongyu let out a long roar as he activated the army character formula and charged into the crowd, crazily slaughtering his way through. In an instant, the entire Great Hall of Bones was covered by terrifying shockwaves. However, nothing happened in the Great Hall of Bones. The seals that sealed the elixirs were not affected at all. Chapter 1870. There were 5 great clans that controlled the Water Cloud planet, namely the Lin, Wang, Baizhua, and Qin clans. Which of these 5 clans was stronger? There was no particular one. Legend had it that each of these 2 clans had 2 half-step chaotic space realm ancestors. In other words, there were at least 10 people on the Water Cloud planet who had taken this half-step. As long as any one of these 10 managed to take the final half-step, their clan would be able to suppress the other 4 great clans and become the strongest clan on the Water Cloud planet. As long as the other clan's experts did not break through to the chaotic space realm, they would forever live under the shadow of their clan. Because of this, the 10 half-step chaotic space realm experts of the 5 great clans had all appeared for the appearance of Reverend Shurgu's tomb. At this moment, the 10 of them were using their strongest attacks to attack Muronyu. However, Muronyu controlled the law of space. Although it was still a little shallow now, it was still much stronger than their laws. Moreover, the laws they controlled were not considered laws at all. They were just pieced together. As a result, when Muronyu used the army character art to travel through the endless void, they could not do anything to Muronyu. Moreover, what shocked the many ancestors was that Muronyu's control of the law of space was becoming stronger and stronger as the battle continued. Although Muronyu could not condense more space power in his body for the time being, he could already borrow the space power around him. The more this was the case, the more the 10 ancestors wanted to kill Muronyu. Since they had already offended him, if they did not kill him now, when would they? Once Muronyu matured, it would be time for their clans to be wiped out. Thus, the 10 ancestors had used all of their trump cards. But to their disappointment, they couldn't do anything to Muronyu. However, they were slightly relieved that although they could not do anything to Muronyu could not do anything to them either. Muronyu's movement technique was only stronger now. Although their attacks were slightly stronger, those half-step chaotic space realm ancestors were not to be trifled with. Moreover, when the 10 of them joined forces, they easily neutralized Muronyu's attack. Muronyu frowned slightly. If it was just 1 or 2 half-step chaotic space realm ancestors, he was confident that he could kill them. However, if there were 10 of them, he would have to use his weapon fragments to kill them. However, once he used the weapon fragment, his trump card would be exposed. However, now that the Lin family and the other family's patriarch's realms and strengths were clear, so what if their trump cards were exposed? Just kill them all. Thus, Muronyu let out a long howl. He took a step forward and rushed to the side of the other ancestor of the Lin family. This old ancestor was called Lin Xionghu. He was Lin Xionghu's younger brother and was also very strong. However, he couldn't compare to Lin Xiongshi. You're courting death. Seeing Muronyu pouncing straight at him, Lin Xionghu was so angry that it was as if he had been raped. With a roar, he circulated his space force with all his strength and covered his right fist with all his strength. Then, he fiercely punched at Muronyu's head. A cold, murderous intent flashed in Muronyu's eyes. He had unknowingly brought out his weapon fragment, clasped it in his right hand, and slammed it down at Lin Xionghu. Although Muronyu's space force was a little stronger than Lin Xionghu's, there was a limit to it. Lin Xionghu believed that his strength was much stronger than Muronyu's. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to attack. In the blink of an eye, the 2 attacks collided in the void. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk amidst the violent explosion, a black light shot out from Muronyu's hand. It rushed in front of Lin Xionghu in an instant. At this moment, Lin Xionghu's heart was shrouded by a strong aura of death. Shocked, Lin Xionghu instantly retreated. But although he was fast, the weapon fragment was even faster. Just as Lin Xionghu's figure flashed, but before he could retreat, the weapon fragment had already shot into his head. Almost at the same time as it entered Lin Xionghu's head, the weapon fragment had already shot out from behind Lin Xionghu's head, bringing with it a spray of blood. Lin Xionghu's life aura also disappeared in an instant. Dead. A dignified Chaos Realm cultivator died, just like that. And he didn't even know how he died. Asterisk boom. Asterisk Lin Xionghu's tall figure fell directly to the ground, causing a large cloud of dust to rise. Seeing this scene, the other old ancestors were frightened, and their attacks paused for a moment. Xionghu, Lin Xiongshi roared, took a step forward, and arrived in front of Lin Xionghu's body. He stretched out his big hand and hugged Lin Xionghu. However, although Lin Xionghu's body was still warm, his life aura had completely dissipated. His entire soul was gone. You must die. Lin Xiongshi put down Lin Xionghu's body and turned to look at Muronyu. His eyes were red, and his killing intent soared. Step by step, he walked towards Moronyu. However, Moronyu didn't show any fear as he stepped forward to meet them. If he were to face these old ancestors alone, he could simply kill gods. What did he have to fear? Since this boy can kill Xionghu, he can also kill any one of us. Even if he escapes, after leaving here in the future, no matter how big the water cloud planet is, he will find you and kill you one by one. Even your families will fall because of this person. Therefore, we must join forces to kill this bastard. Lin Xiongshi stopped after a few steps, glanced at the other old ancestors, and said coldly, "Puff!" Moronyu could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He originally thought that Lin Xiongshi would fight him alone, but it turned out that was not the case. The other old ancestors nodded slightly, knowing that Lin Xiongshi was right. Therefore, they joined forces to attack Moronyu again. This time, they all used their own vitality, and some of the ultimate moves that they had been holding back were also used. If Moronyu hadn't brought out his weapon fragment, he would have been forced into a corner by their storm-like attacks. He would have only been able to barely protect himself. However, after using the weapon fragments, their joint attacks did not pose much of a threat to him. Die! Moronyu roared, and the weapon fragments attacked fiercely. Puff! One of the old ancestors of the Chun clan was accidentally beheaded. However, anyone who was hit by the weapon fragments would definitely die. At the same time that his head was cut off, his soul was also cut off. At this time, only 8 old ancestors were left. The pressure on Moronyu was greatly reduced. The 8 old ancestors felt a chill in their hearts. They were all stunned by Morongyu's ferocious power. 10 of them had joined forces, and 2 of them had been killed by him. What about 8 of them? Some of the old ancestors already had thoughts of leaving. Soon, Moronyu gave them an answer. Bang! Another old ancestor of the Wang clan was killed. Only 7 old ancestors were left. Swoosh, this time, many old ancestors retreated in a hurry. They could not do anything to Moronyu, but Moronyu kept killing them. Who knew if they would be the next to be killed? Therefore, they fled. As for Lin Xiongshi and the old ancestors of the Chun and Wang clans, although they were furious and wanted nothing more than to kill Moronyu. However, they also knew that they could not kill Moronyu with their strength, so they finally retreated with incomparable resentment. In an instant, all 7 old ancestors fled through the back door of the main hall. Only Moronyu was left in the main hall. Moronyu did not chase after them. As long as they were still in Master Shirgu's tomb, they would not be able to escape. Now is the time to collect these chaotic space realm pills. Without any difficulty, Moronyu collected these chaotic space realm pills. However, these pills were much more powerful than rebirth realm pills. However, the medicinal power had more or less dissipated, which had a moderate impact on the effects of the pills. After collecting all the elixirs, Moronyu leisurely left the hall. There was another main hall behind the main hall. Could there be weapons or pills of a higher realm stored there? As Moronyu pondered, his figure flickered and flew into the main hall. There were no pills or weapons of a higher realm in the main hall as Moronyu had imagined. Other than the 7 old ancestors, the only other thing in the main hall was the crystal coffin in the center. There was nothing else in the main hall, making it seem empty. However, when Moronyu entered the main hall, he saw a strange scene. The old ancestors of the Wang clan and Chun clan were all looking at the crystal coffin with fear and annoyance. Only the old ancestor of the Lin clan stood there expressionlessly. Morongyu's pupils abruptly shrank. Although this guy was standing there was no sign of life on him. Could it be? Moronyu had a bad feeling. Then he looked at the crystal coffin. Inside the crystal coffin lay a skeleton that shone with a faint fluorescent light. However, this skeleton was constantly emitting a powerful aura that made one's heart palpitate. This skeleton must be Master Shirgu's skeleton. This was the place where Master Shirgu was buried. Let's destroy this crystal coffin together. The old ancestor of the Chun clan shouted and attacked first. The other old ancestors of the other clans did not hesitate to attack the crystal coffin. Rumble, Enduring such a terrifying attack, the crystal coffin burst out with blinding light. However, that was all. The crystal coffin did not move at all. On the other hand, the pressure emitted by the skeleton in the crystal coffin was getting more and more intense and terrifying. It was as if Master Shurgu was about to be resurrected. However, Muronyu knew that Master Shurgu had been dead for a reincarnation cycle and would not be resurrected. The reason for this was because the old ancestor of the Lin clan had taken over his body. That's right, Lin Xiongshi had taken over Master Shurgu's body. Chapter 1871. Brat, if you don't attack now, when are you going to attack? The Qin family's ancestor roared at Muronyu. Once Lin Xiongshi successfully takes over the corpse of Reverend Shurgu, he'll be at least a chaotic realm patriarch. You might be strong, but you won't be able to withstand a slap from a chaotic realm patriarch. A patriarch of the Bai clan roared. Muronyu thought to himself. However, he was somewhat disdainful of the words of the two patriarchs. So what if Lin Xiongshi took over Reverend Shurgu's corpse? So what if he became a chaotic realm patriarch? It wouldn't be easy to kill him. However, Muronyu still made his move. Clang! The weapon fragment turned into a black stream of light and rapidly struck the crystal coffin. With a kacha sound, a small crack appeared on the crystal coffin. Seeing this, the jaws of the other patriarchs fell to the ground. Even with their combined attacks, they hadn't been able to create a single crack. On the other hand, Muronyu had managed to create one with a single attack. Was the difference between them really that great? Clang! 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 Muronyu controlled the weapon fragment to attack rapidly. Although he wasn't afraid of a chaotic realm patriarch, he didn't want to face a chaotic realm patriarch. However, although Muronyu attacked crazily, he didn't know what the crystal coffin was made of. He didn't know what material the crystal coffin was made of, nor did he know what grade of origin artifact it was, but only a small crack appeared on it. It couldn't be broken at all. On the contrary, as they attacked, the aura of Reverend Shurgu's corpse in the crystal coffin became more and more terrifying. It had reached the half-step chaotic realm. At this time, everyone felt that something was wrong, and the thought of retreating appeared in their hearts. If Reverend Shurgu or Lin Xiongshi reached the chaotic realm, they could kill all of them with a single slap. Boom! Before this thought disappeared from their minds, the crystal coffin that they couldn't break through for a long time suddenly exploded. Everyone's hearts sank, and their faces turned ugly. This was because they weren't the ones who broke the crystal coffin. It was Reverend Shurgu's corpse that was sealed in the crystal coffin. Or rather, it was Lin Xiongshi who broke it with a single punch. Rumble, Lin Xiongshi's body exuded a terrifying aura, which instantly enveloped the entire hall as the fragments flew everywhere. The Wang family's patriarch and the other patriarchs instantly felt a terrifying sense of danger rising from the bottom of their hearts. Thus, their figures retreated rapidly. There was no hesitation. Even Muronyu was the same. Lin Xiongshi had successfully taken over Reverend Shurgu's body and become a Chaos Realm existence. Although it was impossible for him to return to the height of Reverend Shurgu when he was alive, he was at least at the Chaos Realm. On the Water Cloud Star, a chaotic void realm expert could definitely sweep through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Ha ha! None of you can escape. Lin Xiongshi laughed loudly. At the same time, a terrifying aura burst out from his body and rushed out in all directions. Instantly, everyone felt as if they had fallen into a swamp, and it was difficult for them to move. Many patriarchs turned to look at Lin Xiongshi. They were both shocked and furious. The Bai family patriarch roared angrily. Lin Xiongshi, you and I are both patriarchs of Water Cloud Planet. Why must you be so ruthless? Are you an idiot? If we kill all of you, our Lin family will become the #1 family on Water Cloud Planet and unify the entire planet. Don't say that you don't want to do this. If you were in the Chaos Realm, would you do the same? Lin Xiongshi sneered. Many patriarchs fell silent. If they were in Lin Xiongshi's shoes, they would definitely do the same. Since that was the case, they would see who was stronger. The six patriarchs looked at each other and then attacked at the same time. They did not want to attack at all, but if they did not work together, they would not be able to escape this hall, let alone Reverend Shurgu's tomb. Lin Xiongshi laughed loudly when he saw the six patriarchs attacking together. However, he was only a skeleton at the moment. Coupled with his laughter, it was truly horrifying. Ant-like existences. Today, I'll kill all of you first, then I'll destroy your families. Die. Lin Xiongshi laughed as he reached out with his skeleton hand and grabbed at the air. Swoosh! A saber formed from the power of space appeared in his hand. After possessing Reverend Shurgu's corpse, Lin Xiongshi had not only risen to the Chaos Realm in terms of power, but he had also obtained a part of Reverend Shurgu's inheritance in the Law of Space. The Law of Space he could now use was at least 100 times stronger than before his breakthrough. With a single step, Lin Xiongshi stepped into the crowd. Then, he swung his saber down with enough force to split Mount Tai. Buffed. One of the Bai family's patriarchs did not even have time to react before he was cleaved in half from head to toe. He could not be more dead. There were still 5 patriarchs left. The 5 old ancestors were shocked, and they unleashed even more power to attack. However, the difference in strength between a half-step Chaos Realm and a true Chaos Realm was just too great. Lin Xiongshi seemed to have entered a realm where no one could stop him as he killed all the patriarchs who had dominated Water Cloud Planet. The 6 patriarchs did not even have a chance to escape before they were all killed. In the end, only Murong Yu and Lin Xiongshi remained in the Great Hall. As for Lin Xiongxi's original body, it had long been pulverized by the power of the battle. Kill yourself, kid. Lin Xiongshi looked at Murong Yu and said in an indifferent and arrogant voice, as if he was looking at an ant. Murong Yu had not attacked yet, not because he did not dare, but because he did not want to. His blood was boiling, and he wanted to fight Lin Xiongshi, who was already in the Chaos Realm. With Hichu Luoshu and the 9 Cuts mantra, Murong Yu had at least a 90% chance of survival. Although Lin Xiongshi had refined Reverend Shurgu's corpse, he had only barely entered the Chaos Realm. The power and the Law of Space he had obtained were not complete, and he was not familiar with them. This was the perfect time for him to fight Lin Xiongshi. Thus, Murong Yu let out a long roar and charged at Lin Xiongshi with the weapon fragment in his hand. This weapon fragment is not bad. I'll gladly accept it. Lin Xiongshi laughed heartily as he stretched out his bony hand to grab the weapon fragments. The reason why Reverend Shurgu was called Reverend Shurgu was because he had the appearance of a skeleton when he was alive. He specialized in cultivating his bones. Therefore, his bones were comparable to origin weapons of the Chaos Realm and were extremely powerful. This was why Lin Xiongshi dared to grab the weapon fragment with his hand, even after knowing its power. Clang! In the blink of an eye, the 2 sides collided. After a deafening sound, Murong Yu's body instantly retreated. The web between his thumb and index finger, where he held the weapon fragment, cracked open and fresh blood dripped down. However, Lin Xiongshi only trembled slightly. After all, he was a Chaos Realm expert. Even the weakest Chaos Realm expert was many times stronger than a peak Rebirth Realm expert. However, Lin Xiongxi's face was filled with disbelief. Then, it turned into anger that filled the sky. This was because cracks had appeared on the bones of his right hand during the collision just now. Although it was only a crack the size of a spider's web, a crack was still a crack no matter how small it was. In other words, the weapon fragment in Murong Yu's hand could shatter his bones and even his physical body. It should be known that Reverend Shurgu was a peak Chaos Realm expert. His bones were extremely powerful and comparable to a peak Chaos Realm origin weapon. Even though the power in his bones had gradually dissipated after a reincarnation era, they were still equivalent to a mid-level Chaos Realm origin weapon. Since Murong Yu's weapon fragment could injure him, it must be at least a high-level Chaos Realm origin weapon. Thinking of this, Lin Xiongxi's hollow eyes suddenly emitted a green light. It was the light of greed. He took a step forward and slashed at Murongyu with the battle saber formed by the power of space in his hand. Murongyu let out a long roar as the He-Tu and the Luo tome hovered above his head. Rays of yellow light fell from the sky, firmly protecting him. Meanwhile, he had already taken out his weapon fragment and attacked Lin Xiongshi madly. Swoosh! 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 The weapon fragment flew everywhere. For a moment, the entire hall was filled with illusions created by the weapon fragment. However, Lin Xiongshi was a Chaos Realm expert after all. A layer of ghastly white light enveloped his entire body. Although the weapon fragment was extremely powerful, it could not break through this layer of energy shield. Limited by Murongyu's own strength, the weapon fragment could not unleash much of its power. The weapon fragment was useless, and the power of space was even more useless. Only the power of time could temporarily restrain Lin Xiongshi. However, it could only restrain him temporarily. The time was too short and would disappear in a flash. Soul power? It could not injure a Chaos Realm expert at all. Therefore, the current Murongyu could not kill Lin Xiongshi at all. On the contrary, Lin Xiongshi could not kill Murongyu even if he wanted to. Boy, I'll let you off for now. When I fully control the power of a Chaos Realm expert in the future, you'll die. After attacking Murongyu for a long time without success, Lin Xiongshi took a step forward and disappeared from the Great Hall of Bones. Murongyu was speechless. With his speed, it would not be difficult for him to stop and restrain Lin Xiongshi. However, that would not be of any use. He could not kill Lin Xiongshi. Lin Xiongshi needed time to improve his strength before he could kill Murongyu. As for Murongyu, didn't he also need time to increase his strength? Once he entered the Chaos Realm, wouldn't it be easy for him to kill Lin Xiongshi, who had become a Chaos Realm expert through possession? Lin Xiongshi had already left Reverend Shi Gu's parents and killed all the other half-step Chaos Realm ancestors. Therefore, even if there were other Rebirth Realm experts present, they would not be a match for Murongyu. After plundering Reverend Shi Gu's parents, Murongyu casually killed a few blind fellows and left. He did not obtain anything from Reverend Shi Gu's grave. It seemed that there was nothing of value other than the pills, origin artifacts, and Reverend Shi Gu's remains. Chapter 1872. The water cloud star was extremely large, at least 100 million times the size of the Holy World. As such, the gravity on the water cloud star was extremely terrifying. Even if a low-level rebirth state expert could fly, it would still be extremely difficult. Moreover, they could only fly for short periods. This was because flying consumed a lot of energy. However, after reaching the rebirth realm, one would possess an extremely large amount of energy and be able to fly for long periods of time. Murongyu had already reached the 9th level of the rebirth realm. The energy in his body was 10,000 times, 100,000 times, or even more than that of others of the same level. As such, he could fly around the water cloud star forever without any problems. Even if Murongyu did not have such a large amount of energy, he could still fly for long periods of time with the Tree of Life. At this point, Murongyu had already been flying for a month. However, with Murongyu's current speed, he could not even fly around the water cloud star once in a month. One could only imagine how large the water cloud star was. Why did Murongyu fly? He was looking for items that might contain a large amount of energy to refine and increase his strength. However, although Murongyu had discovered some items that contained a large amount of energy, his appetite was simply too terrifying. After refining it, it only increased his cultivation by a small level. During this 1 month, several major events had happened. The Lin family patriarch had successfully broken through to the chaotic realm, becoming the first chaotic realm patriarch on the water cloud star. He swept through the 9 heavens and 10 earths of the water cloud star, suppressing everything. His terrifying strength was frightening. The second matter was that the Lin family patriarch had completely annihilated the Chun, Bai Wang, and Bai families. He had plundered all the wealth of the four great families. After destroying the four great families, Lin Xiongshi had ordered all factions on the Water Cloud Star to submit to the Lin family and become their subordinates. Once the order was issued, no one dared to disobey. As such, tens of thousands of races came to congratulate and submit. Of course, these tens of thousands of races were not races, but clans. Of course, not all factions were willing to submit. Only a few troublesome factions were unwilling. Lin Xiongshi flew into a rage and attacked powerfully, suppressing everything. He uprooted those clans. It should be known that those clans also had half-step Chaos Realm experts. However, these half-step Chaotic Space Realm experts were like paper in front of Lin Xiongshi, who was a true Chaotic Space Realm expert. They were unable to withstand a single blow and were shattered in one move. This shocked the entire Water Cloud planet. Thus, the Lin family successfully unified the entire Water Cloud planet and became its ruler. As for the Lin clan's ancestor, Lin Xiongshi, he became the #1 person on the Water Cloud planet. However, the strange thing was that Lin Xiongshi didn't seem to care about Murongyu at all. It was as if he had forgotten about Murongyu. However, Murongyu was well aware of this. Lin Xiongshi had not forgotten about him. After all, he had killed the #1 genius of the Lin family's younger generation, as well as Lin Xionghu, a half-step Chaotic Space Realm expert. Would Lin Xiongshi forget about this? He couldn't. However, Lin Xiongshi knew that he wasn't a match for Murongyu right now, so he didn't attack him for the time being. Once his strength increased, he would definitely be a match for Murongyu. And that day was not far away. As time passed, Murongyu's strength seemed to be stagnant. However, Lin Xiongshi's strength was constantly improving. If there's a chance, it seems like I'll have to join a sect or faction. Murongyu pondered as he flew. During this time, some ancient and even primordial ruins and cave abodes had appeared on the Water Cloud planet. However, by the time Murongyu heard the news and rushed over, those ruins and cave abodes had already been emptied. Without a faction, Murongyu could only rely on himself to obtain all kinds of information. In the end, he was too weak. Of course, the faction that Murongyu wanted to join was definitely not any faction on the Water Cloud planet. At the very least, it was a large sect on a higher-level Yuan planet. Murongyu, who was flying, suddenly froze. This was because he had clearly felt the weapon fragment in his body tremble slightly just now. The weapon fragment was like a big boss. Even if Murongyu commanded it, it wouldn't move, let alone tremble on its own. But now it had actually moved on its own. There must be something wrong. Murongyu's divine telekinesis entered his body and immediately found that the tip of the weapon fragment was pointing in a direction. This was a rather strange phenomenon. It had never happened before. Murongyu's heart skipped a beat as he flew in the direction the weapon fragment was pointing in. One day later, Murongyu entered a large mountain. However, the weapon fragment stopped there and no longer pointed in a direction. This made Murongyu depressed. At the same time, he also felt that the thing that had triggered the weapon fragment's reaction was definitely on this mountain range. However, this mountain range was really too big. How was he going to find it? The mountain range was very big, but very ordinary. Occasionally, a few very low roars could be heard from the depths of the mountain range. Those were the roars of powerful, ferocious beasts. The most powerful, ferocious beasts here had reached the half-step chaotic realm. Because they were restricted by the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth on the Water Cloud planet, these ferocious beasts were stuck at the last half-step and could not break through. Otherwise, it would be difficult to guarantee that no chaotic realm ferocious beast would appear here. Extending his divine telekinesis to the limit, Murongyu began to dig 3 feet into the ground in this mountain range to search. However, it did not matter. After reaching the depths of the mountain range, Murongyu would occasionally encounter a few half-step chaotic realm ferocious beasts. This was just an ordinary mountain range, and yet there were so many half-step chaotic realm ferocious beasts. How many mountain ranges like this were there on the Water Cloud planet? Murongyu's conclusion was shocking. The number of half-step chaotic realm ferocious beasts on the water cloud planet was at least 1,000 times, or even 100 million times, more than the number of cultivators. At this moment, Moronyu was deep in the mountain range. The power in his body trembled again and pointed in another direction. Moronyu was overjoyed and hurriedly flew in that direction. Soon, he encountered an extremely powerful ferocious beast. When he encountered this ferocious beast, the weapon fragment in his body also stopped moving. In the end, it pointed to this ferocious beast. When a human encountered a ferocious beast, there was nothing much to say. Moreover, this ferocious beast might have something that Moronyu needed. Therefore, Moronyu directly attacked. Roar! After a loud roar, the ferocious beast attacked. After a loud bang, Moronyu was sent flying by the ferocious beast's claw. This half-step chaotic realm ferocious beast was even stronger than Lin Xiongshi and the others back then. Back then, the 10 of them had only been able to fight this ferocious beast to a draw. Moreover, this ferocious beast had thick skin and flesh, and its physical strength was extremely terrifying. In a moment of carelessness, Moronyu was sent flying. However, he was only sent flying. Apart from his chi and blood surging from the impact, Moronyu was not injured. Moronyu never underestimated his opponents. This was because he knew that if he underestimated his opponent, it was very likely that he would fail miserably. At that time, he would not even know how he died. Kill! Moronyu took a step forward and rushed up again to fight with the ferocious beast. Before taking out the weapon fragment, Moronyu was only able to fight to a draw with the ferocious beast. He even fell to the ground and relied entirely on the spatial rules of order and the army formula to stabilize his body. However, it was impossible for the ferocious beast to seriously injure Moronyu. After a while, Moronyu took out the weapon fragment. Although this ferocious beast was powerful, it was no longer useful for Moronyu to train. Although Moronyu did not want to rely on the weapon fragment, he urgently needed to improve his strength now. Therefore, he could only rely on the power of the weapon fragment. Although the ferocious beast had thick skin and flesh, it could not withstand the bombardment of the weapon fragment at all. Moreover, Moronyu's speed could completely crush it, so it did not even have a chance to escape before it was killed. In the end, this ferocious beast could not avoid being skinned and dismembered. It could not be helped. The weapon fragment was pointing at this ferocious beast. It was definitely not targeting its body, but something inside it. In the end, Moronyu found 2 fist-sized crystals in the ferocious beast's body. One was the ferocious beast's origin crystal. The ferocious beast's power was stored in this origin crystal and could be considered a treasure. However, it was obvious that this origin crystal was not where the weapon fragment was pointing. It had to be the other origin crystal. It was a dark and swarthy crystal, and it looked very ordinary. However, Moronyu did not dare to think that this origin crystal was really ordinary. This was because he had found this thing in the ferocious beast's stomach. Moreover, it seemed that this thing had been in the ferocious beast's stomach for a long time and had not been digested. How terrifying was the digestive ability of a half-step Chaos Realm expert. One could imagine that this origin crystal was definitely not ordinary. Moreover, the moment this origin crystal was taken out, the weapon fragment in Moronyu's body trembled slightly. This was definitely a treasure. Moronyu could not see the true appearance of this thing. However, Moronyu was not interested in looking at it. With a thought, he put this thing into the primal chaos furnace. This time, he did not swallow it. After all, this thing was taken out of the ferocious beast's stomach. If he swallowed it, it would probably disgust Moronyu for a long time. Refine. The primal chaos furnace began refining. At this time, Lin Xiongshi had also come out of seclusion. His strength had stabilized, and he was confident that he could easily kill Moronyu. However, the water cloud planet was so big. How difficult would it be to find Moronyu? However, this was not a problem for Lin Xiongshi. If Moronyu does not appear in front of the Lin family's gate in a month, Lin Xiongshi will personally destroy the entire holy world. After Lin Xiongshi came out of seclusion, this news rapidly spread throughout the entire water cloud planet as if it had grown wings. However, Morongyu was unaware of this. He was still refining the swarthy origin crystal in the depths of an unknown mountain range. Time passed day by day, and soon it was close to a month's time. However, Morongyu was still unaware. Chapter 1873. Plucking the Stars. If one was only in the rebirth realm, they might not be able to do it. However, chaotic void realm experts could do it. However, the stars that could be plucked by them were not origin stars. Instead, they were planets of an even lower level, such as the sacred world and other planets. Moreover, when one wanted to leave the holy world or mysterious star, they had to use heaven's eye or be brought out by an expert of a higher realm. However, rebirth realm and chaotic void realm experts did not need to use heaven's eye to enter planets like the holy world and mysterious star. That was why Lin's song had descended from the sky and landed in the holy world. With Lin Xiongshir's current strength, he could pluck the stars with his hand. He could destroy the holy world on the water cloud star. Of course, the prerequisite was that he knew where the holy world was. Lin Xiongshi stretched out his hand, and a terrifying power surged out. Immediately after, a giant hand formed by power quickly grabbed toward the sky. Although it was daytime, many experts could see the stars in the endless starry sky with their eyesight. At this moment, Lin Xiongshir's huge hand was grabbing towards one of the planets that were as numerous as the sands of the Ganges. Obviously, that star was the holy world. Once the holy world was caught, it would not be able to withstand Lin Xiongshir's attack and would be crushed. Lin Xiongshi was extremely fast. After he rushed out of the water cloud star, his hand rapidly expanded. When his hand was near the holy world, it had already expanded to a size larger than the holy world. However, Lin Xiongshir's face was already pale. Obviously, even with his chaotic void realm strength, it was still very difficult for him to do this. If the holy world was a little bigger or further, Lin Xiongshi would not be able to do it. However, this was already enough. It was enough to crush the holy world. The holy world was about to be crushed by Lin Xiongshi. However, right at this moment, Lin Xiongshir's outstretched hand suddenly shattered. The power immediately spread out in all directions and quickly dissipated in the endless space. Everyone was stunned. They could not react for a moment. What was this guy trying to do? Humph. Lin Xiongshi snorted coldly and looked at the sky in the distance. Others might not have reacted yet and did not know what was going on. But as the person involved, he was someone who clearly understood. His power hand was blasted apart by someone. Of course, it was not ordinary power, but the power of space. His giant hand of power was crushed by the power of space. Morongyu was probably the only person on the water cloud star who had such an ability. However, he didn't see Morongyu and didn't know how Morongyu did it. Thus, he looked ahead and began to search. Lin Xiongshi, you've really disgraced the chaotic void stage. Even I feel ashamed for you. A cold voice was slowly transmitted from afar. Everyone was shocked. Who would dare to say such things to Lin Xiongshi in public? Wasn't he afraid of being killed? However, they soon came to their senses. Morongyu had arrived. Thus, everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw a black figure shuttling through the void from afar at lightning speed. In the blink of an eye, this figure appeared before everyone's eyes. Finally, he stood in the void, facing Lin Xiongshi from afar. If it wasn't Morongyu, who else could it be? The eyes of many people in the crowd lit up. They all looked at Morongyu, only to discover that Morongyu looked travel-worn. It was as if he had rushed over a long distance. That's right, Morongyu had indeed rushed over a long distance. Moreover, he had been delayed midway. Otherwise, he could have arrived a few days earlier. However, it was not too late. He could only say that he had arrived at the right time. While flying, he had sensed Lin Xiongshi attacking the Saint's world. That was why he had exploded with the power of space to crush Lin Xiongshir's giant hand of power. Lin Xiongshi stood on his throne, his pupils constricting as he looked at Murong-Yu. He could not help but exclaim, "Half-step chaotic void stage." Hiss! Everyone's expressions froze when they heard Lin Xiongshir's words. Over the past month, news of this had spread throughout the entire Water Cloud Star. Everyone knew that Murong-Yu had only been in the 7th level of the Rebirth Realm when he had first arrived on the Water Cloud Star. But now, in less than half a year, he had already reached the half-step chaotic void stage. Wasn't the speed of improvement a little too abnormal? Aside from Murong-Yu, everyone, including Lin Xiongshir, felt so ashamed that they couldn't show their faces. Which one of them had not cultivated for hundreds of millions of eras, or even hundreds of millions of eras, just to advance by one minor realm? Murong-Yu, on the other hand, had advanced by 3 minor realms in half a year. This was truly enviable. Lin Xiongshir's eyes flashed coldly. He felt a little jealous. Yes, he was jealous. If he was as abnormal as Murong-Yu, he would have broken through to the chaotic void stage a long time ago, or even higher. Why would he need to possess Reverend Shirgu's remains? One had to know that Reverend Shirgu had been a skeleton when he was alive. Although Lin Xiongshir's current appearance was similar to his original appearance, it was just that he had forcefully condensed flesh and blood. Similarly, Murong-Yu's expression was similar. His face was gloomy, and his killing intent was overflowing. "Shameless bastard, prepare to die," Murong-Yu shouted as he took a few steps forward. Then he punched out fiercely. A look of disdain appeared on Lin Xiongshir's face. "Murong-Yu, so what if you were a half-step chaotic void stage? In my eyes, you were just an ant. Today, I will kill you and use your blood to tell you that I am not to be offended." As he spoke, Lin Xiongshir also punched out. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the fists of the two men collided fiercely in the void, and then burst out with a dull sound. But that was all. A powerful force slammed into Murong-Yu's body. Murong-Yu could not help but groan as he was sent flying. In an instant, he turned into a small black dot and disappeared before everyone's eyes. Everyone was stunned. Although Murong-Yu had reached the half-step chaotic void stage, he was still a half-step chaotic void stage expert. In the end, he was still no match for a true chaotic void stage expert. As expected, everyone sighed inwardly and looked at Lin Xiongshir. Lin Xiongshir was still sitting on the throne. His body did not even sway. The difference between the two was obvious. "Lin Xiongshir, come and fight." Murong-Yu's thunderous voice reverberated from the 9 heavens. The impact caused everyone's blood to churn, and even their souls to tremble. However, everyone was shocked. Although Murong-Yu was in a sorry state, he did not seem to have suffered any injuries. Humph! Lin Xiongshir snorted coldly and flew up from the throne with an ugly expression. Puff! Just as Lin Xiongshir flew away from the throne, a gust of wind blew past. The throne that Lin Xiongshir was sitting on suddenly shattered, turning into millions of pieces that scattered with the wind. Everyone was stunned at first, but then they reacted. It turned out that it was not because Lin Xiongshir was very powerful that he did not suffer any impact. Instead, he had transferred the impact to the throne. What did this mean? It meant that Lin Xiongshir was not invincible. If he was really much stronger than Murong-Yu, Murong-Yu's strength would not be able to shatter Lin Xiongshir's throne. After realizing this point, the surrounding people immediately looked forward to it. It was because Lin Xiongshir was too unpopular. Everyone could not wait for Murong-Yu to kill him. Seeing Lin Xiongshir charge over, Murong-Yu could not help but let out a heroic roar. His entire body was surging with terrifying power. He had already taken out the He-Tu and the inscription of the Luo, which floated above his head. Streams of powerful energy fell down to protect him firmly. Holding the fragments of his weapon, he stepped into the air and charged toward Lin Xiongshir. Lin Xiongshir was very disdainful. No matter how strong an ant is, it is still an ant. I can kill you with one hand. However, despite saying that, Lin Xiongshir's expression turned grave. He realized that although Murong-Yu was only a half-step chaotic void realm expert, his strength was comparable to a cultivator who had just broken through to the chaotic void realm. If Murong Yu had such battle prowess when he was in Master Shirgu's tomb, he would have died without a doubt. As long as Murong Yu broke through to the chaotic void realm, Lin Xiongshi would definitely not be his match. Therefore, Lin Xiongshi was determined to kill him. Both of them unleashed their most powerful attacks, crazily bombarding each other, wanting to cut each other into pieces. Murong Yu did not hold back at all. The power of space, the power of time, the soul attack, the fragments of his weapon, and almost all of his trump cards were used. However, although Lin Xiongshi did not have any treasures, his hands were enough. With a flip of his hand, he unleashed a terrifying power that shook heaven and earth. There was still a huge gap between Murong Yu's strength and Lin Xiongxi's. It did not take long for him to be suppressed. However, it would not be easy for Lin Xiongshi to kill Murong Yu. Bang! Murong Yu's fist landed on Lin Xiongxi's body and sent him flying. However, before he was sent flying, Lin Xiongxi's leg lashed out at Murong Yu's waist. The He Tu and Luo Shu's descending power was instantly shattered, allowing Lin Xiongxi's foot to land on Murong Yu's waist. Bang! The lower half of Murong Yu's body was blasted apart. Dead. At that moment, Lin Xiongshi had already arrived. Murong Yu could only retreat. However, perhaps because his body was destroyed, Murong Yu's speed suddenly dropped. The lower half of his body that had just regenerated was destroyed by Lin Xiongxi's punch. Murong Yu spat out a mouthful of blood, along with pieces of his internal organs. After a series of heavy injuries, his aura rapidly declined. His face was pale, and his eyes were gradually becoming listless. Everyone sighed inwardly. It seemed like Murong Yu was about to lose. Once Murong Yu lost, he would die without a doubt. The holy world would also be destroyed by Lin Xiongshi. No one on the Water Cloud planet would be able to fight against Lin Xiongshi. Chapter 1874. The battle continued, and Murong Yu was getting weaker and weaker. He spat out another mouthful of blood from Lin Xiongxi's attacks. However, the more this happened, the angrier Murong Yu became. He continued to fight with his life on the line and didn't cower. Of course, in reality, Murong Yu was constantly retreating. They were already far away from the Lin family. Wherever it passed, the terrifying power would constantly spread out, shaking the mountains and rivers below, causing them to collapse and cut off the flow of water. Lin Xiongshi attacked crazily and forced Murong Yu to retreat. However, that was all. Murong Yu's recovery ability was too strong. Every time he severely injured Murong Yu would recover in an instant. This made Lin Xiongshi very depressed. However, Lin Xiongshi knew that he had already suppressed Murong Yu. He was suppressing him. He wanted to see if Murong Yu's recovery ability could support him. Moreover, Lin Xiongshi was also interested in Murong Yu's recovery ability. He was certain that it was a cultivation technique. As long as one was a cultivator, who wouldn't want to increase their strength? Attack and defense were recovery abilities. Because of that, Lin Xiongshi still held back a bit of his strength during the battle. He was afraid that he would accidentally kill Murong Yu, leaving not even a trace of him behind. Murong Yu roared angrily and looked like he was going to give it his all. However, the difference in strength between the two parties was too great. Even if he gave it his all, he was still injured. At this moment, due to his serious injuries, his strength had dropped to level 9 of the rebirth state. If this continued, he would be turned into dust by Lin Xiongshi. Lin Xiongshi, I will definitely take revenge for today. Once my strength increases, it will be the death of you and the Lin family. Go home and wash your neck clean and wait for me. Murong Yu made a feint and then flew into the distance. Where do you think you're going? Lin Xiongshi roared and chased after him. However, although Murong Yu's strength had decreased, his speed was not affected. If that was not the case, Murong Yu would have been defeated by Lin Xiongshi. Whoosh, whoosh. The two of them turned into two streaks of light and disappeared into the horizon. Murong Yu lost. Let's go and take a look. The people who were watching the show chased after them. However, the difference in speed between them and Murong Yu was too great. However, The traces left behind by Murong Yu and Li Qiye were too obvious. They could still follow them. Although the water cloud planet is big, you will definitely die no matter where you go. On the water cloud planet, I'm the overlord. Murong Yu, you can end your own life. Lin Xiongshi sneered and flew away at full speed. Murong Yu didn't utter a single word as he continued to fly forward. However, he did not fly in a straight line. Instead, he changed directions back and forth. In the end, even Lin Xiongshi did not know which side of the Lin family they were in. At this time, Murong Yu had entered a mountain range. Along the way, Murong Yu had passed through many mountain ranges and even huge lakes. Many of them were forbidden areas of the Water Star. However, one of them was running away crazily, while the other was determined to kill Murong Yu. Moreover, they were confident in their own strength. They were not afraid of these forbidden areas. They passed by quickly. However, this time, after Murong Yu entered the depths of the mountain range, he stopped at a mountain peak and didn't continue running. On the contrary, he turned around and looked at Lin Xiongshi, who was chasing after him. Lin Xiongshi, did anyone tell you that you will die here? Murong Yu looked at Lin Xiongshi and smiled. Lin Xiongshi stopped in his tracks and revealed a furious expression. Murong Yu, you're just faking it. Lin Xiongshi was furious because he discovered that Murong Yu's essence, energy, and spirit had already recovered to their peak. The serious injuries, the pale face, and the weakening of his aura were all fake. Murong Yu chuckled. Indeed, all of this was just an act. However, this pretending was quite smart. At the beginning, Murong Yu did try his best to kill Lin Xiongshi. However, he later realized that he could not kill Lin Xiongshi. Therefore, in the end, he showed signs of fatigue, and then he was accidentally injured. Then, he could not stop, and his injuries became more and more serious. All this was because of Murong Yu's acting skills and Lin Xiongxi's confidence in his own strength. He did not suspect that Murong Yu was pretending at all. His goal was to trick him to come here. Then, why did Murong Yu trick him to come here? There must be something here that could threaten Lin Xiongshi. As the only chaotic realm expert on the water cloud planet, Lin Xiongshi was not stupid. Therefore, he reacted immediately. He took a step forward and was about to retreat in a flash. However, just as he reacted, Murong Yu made his move. He had gone through untold hardships to lure Lin Xiongshi here. So how could he let him escape and fail at the final step? Murong Yu waved his hand. Suddenly, rumble the entire mountain range shook violently. An incomparably dreadful aura burst out from the ground of the mountain range and soared up to the 9 heavens. During this process, some of the peaks of the mountain range were constantly shattered by these forces and razed to the ground. Some of the peaks that were not there rose from the ground and rushed to the sky. In the blink of an eye, this place changed completely in Murong Yu. At this moment, looking from afar, the entire mountain range was shrouded in thick white fog. At a glance, it was impossible to see what was inside. Even divine consciousness could not be extended. What's going on? Lin Xiongxi's panicked voice rang out. He realized that he had fallen into a formation. This array formation was constantly vibrating, and waves of incomparably terrifying power were crazily suppressing from all directions. It suppressed Lin Xiongshi and made it difficult for him to move. What terrified Lin Xiongshi the most was that this formation's energy seemed to be specifically targeted at him. It suppressed his strength to 10%. Lin Xiongshi instinctively felt disgusted by this formation's energy. Lin Xiongshi, have you realized that you can't even use 10% of your peak strength? Are you curious about what this formation is? Murong Yu's voice came from the front. Lin Xiongshi was furious and threw a punch. However, he was shocked to discover that the power of his punch had already begun to be weakened by the formation as soon as it was thrown out. In less than half a kilometer away, his power had already been weakened to less than 10%. This formation was too powerful. Before Lin Xiongshi could say anything, Murong Yu's voice was heard once more. Lin Xiongshi, if you were any other chaotic void realm expert, you wouldn't be suppressed to this extent even if you entered this array formation. Do you want to know why? You really shouldn't have possessed Reverend Shurgu's corpse. This formation was specifically targeted at Reverend Shurgu. If I'm not wrong, this should be a formation set up by many chaotic void realm experts of the Water Cloud planet to deal with Venerable Shurgu a reincarnation era ago. Although too much time has passed, and the formation's power is less than 10% of its original power, it is enough to destroy this formation. However, it's enough to destroy your foundation. Murong Yu's voice continued to ring out. Every time he finished speaking, Lin Xiongshir's face would turn uglier. This was because he believed Murong Yu's words. However, could this array be enough to annihilate him? That was impossible. Lin Xiongshir roared and unleashed his absolute power to break the formation. Murong Yu didn't appear. Instead, he hid in the shadows of the formation and coldly watched Lin Xiongshir break the formation. He had discovered this formation by accident when he was rushing to the Lin family. It was precisely because he had discovered this formation that Murong Yu had wasted a few days. Otherwise, he would have rushed to the Lin family long ago. In the beginning, Murong Yu had discovered this ancient formation, but he hadn't paid much attention to it. However, when he accidentally activated this formation and destroyed a skeleton, he roughly understood the purpose of this formation. This was a formation targeted at dead spirits. Venerable Shurgu might be a living creature, but he cultivated bones, skeletons. They were similar to dead spirits. Moreover, Murong Yu had guessed that this formation had been set up to deal with Venerable Shurgu. During the process of repairing it, Murong Yu discovered that this was indeed the case. However, Reverend Shurgu was simply too powerful. Even a powerful formation couldn't kill him. On the contrary, this formation had almost been defeated by Venerable Shurgu. Murong Yu could only repair a part of it. Limited by his strength, he couldn't completely repair it. Moreover, in order to maintain this formation, he had used all the elemental crystals he had obtained on the Water Cloud star. If even this array couldn't kill Lin Xiongshir, then Murong Yu would once again return to the days when he was poor. Moreover, there was a chaotic void realm expert constantly chasing after him. Time freeze, spatial slash, spatial shackles, heavenly king grand sage art, saint soul slash. While Lin Xiongshir was breaking the formation, Murong Yu also made his move. He definitely wouldn't let Lin Xiongshir escape from this formation. Otherwise, the holy world would be in danger. This formation had been attacking Lin Xiongshir automatically and even suppressed him. Coupled with Murong Yu's attack, Lin Xiongshir was in a lot of trouble. Shua! A black stream of light flashed past, and a cloud of blood mist shot into the sky. Then, Lin Xiongshir cursed angrily. Murong Yu shook his head and controlled the weapon fragment to attack Lin Xiongshir again. Just now, the weapon fragment had attacked Lin Xiongshir's arm, but it hadn't severed his arm. It had only crushed his flesh. This couldn't be helped. Venerable Shurgu's bones were extremely strong. They were at least at the level of a Chaos Realm expert. Although Lin Xiongshir couldn't use much of his power, it was still extremely difficult to destroy, just like Hichu Luoshu. Chapter 1875. Dripping water could penetrate stone. The ancient formation suppressed Lin Xiongshir greatly. Murong Yu's attacks made Lin Xiongshir roar in anger. He wanted to kill Murong Yu with one punch every time. However, Murong Yu always appeared and disappeared mysteriously. His attacks could not even land on Murong Yu's body. Moreover, his strength was weakened by the formation. As long as Murong Yu was a mile away from him, his attacks would be ineffective against Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu's attacks landed on his body. All kinds of attacks landed on his body, causing his body and movements to stagnate. Furthermore, the soul attack was constantly shaking his soul. If he wasn't careful, he would be suppressed and killed. What disgusted Lin Xiongshir the most was Murong Yu's weapon fragments. Every time before the weapon fragment attacked, it would be silent. Before Lin Xiongshir could react, the weapon fragments had already landed on his arm. Moreover, every attack landed on the same part of his arm. Finally, after over 100 attacks, Lin Xiongshi let out a blood-curdling scream as his right arm was finally chopped off. Swoosh! The moment his arm was chopped off, Lin Xiongxi's aura dropped by at least 20%. The loss of his arm had a huge impact on his strength. After all, Master Shirgu's corpse was equivalent to an origin item. There was a huge difference between an incomplete Yuan artifact and a complete Yuan artifact. The power of an incomplete Yuan tool was far inferior to a complete Yuan tool. There were even some Yuan tools that were completely scrapped due to being incomplete. Although Lin Xiongshi was not destroyed, his strength had dropped by a lot. Moreover, Lin Xiongshi could not reattach his arm. Originally, Murong Yu and the formation's attacks had already made Lin Xiongshi suffer. After losing an arm, he was under the control of others. At this moment, Lin Xiongxi's strength was less than 70% of his peak. This meant that he had lost 30% of his strength. Swoosh! The weapon fragments shot out again and landed on one of Lin Xiongxi's legs. This thigh was Murong Yu's new target. Although losing his limbs wouldn't affect a chaotic Void Realm powerhouse, Lin Xiongshi was different. Murong Yu planned to slowly torture Lin Xiongshi to death. Of course, if he could kill Lin Xiongshi, Murong Yu wouldn't mind. However, he did not have the ability to do so for the time being. After a long time, one of Lin Xiongxi's legs was cut off. This time, Lin Xiongxi's strength had dropped to 50% of his peak strength. However, this 50% still surpassed a half-step chaotic space realm expert. Little bastard, you'd better kill me before the array is activated. Otherwise, I'll make you suffer a fate worse than death. Lin Xiongshi frantically tried to break out of the array. However, there was nothing he could do. However, he did discover something. Although this formation didn't seem to be terrifying, it was still very powerful. However, with every passing moment, the power of the formation would decrease a little. He knew that Murong Yu definitely did not have any extra crystals to support the operation of this array. As long as he could hold on until the array's power ran out, he would be able to turn over a new leaf. Therefore, he stopped trying to break out of the array and didn't try to break out. Instead, he used all his strength to defend himself. As a result, the injuries that Murong Yu inflicted on him were much lighter. Murong Yu frowned slightly. If this continued, Lin Xiongshi might really be able to hold on until the array's power ran out. At that time, it would be difficult for him to kill Lin Xiongshi. However, there was nothing he could do now. He could only attack continuously and frantically. Not long after, Lin Xiongxi's other leg was also cut off by Murong Yu. However, the array's power had also weakened by a lot. As Lin Xiongxi's strength decreased, he still couldn't break out of the array. The array suppression on him was still the same. Not long after, Lin Xiongxi's remaining arm was also cut off. Apart from his head and body, Lin Xiongshi no longer had any limbs. He only had 30% of his peak strength left. With this strength, Murong Yu had nothing to fear. Therefore, Murong Yu roared and rushed out from the dark. With the Hichu Luoshu above his head, he held the weapon fragment in his hand and used the army word formula to attack. How could Lin Xiongshi be Murong Yu's opponent now? Boom! After a loud explosion, the array finally stopped working and the various pressures disappeared. At this moment, Lin Xiongshi finally regained his freedom. However, before he could be happy or break out of the array, Murong Yu's attacks came at him crazily. In just an instant, Murong Yu had attacked more than 1,000,000 times. All of them landed on Lin Xiongxi's head. Bang! Lin Xiongxi's head exploded in an instant after the array formation stopped operating. In fact, Lin Xiongxi's head was the toughest part of his body. If Murong Yu had targeted his head from the start, he would not have been able to destroy Lin Xiongxi's head even after the array stopped working. Therefore, Murong Yu had chosen to attack his limbs. Murong Yu, I won't let you get away with this. You'll die by my hands in the end. Lin Xiongxi's soul quickly escaped after his head was smashed into pieces. Saint Soul Slash. A cold glint flashed across Murong Yu's eyes as he sent out a soul attack, instantly destroying Lin Xiongxi's soul. Lin Xiongxi, a chaotic space realm ancestor, had fallen. Seeing this scene, the people who had caught up to watch the show gasped. Since ancient times, those who could kill an enemy one level higher than them were geniuses among geniuses. They were monstrous existences. However, Murong Yu had actually killed Lin Xiongshi, who was one level higher than him. This was a true monstrous existence. For a moment, everyone looked at Murong Yu with fear, but no one dared to speak or approach him. This was a god of death. His strength was too terrifying. Murong Yu slowly swept his gaze across the surrounding people, then reached out to collect the pieces of Reverend Shurgu's broken bones. Although it was broken into several pieces, it still contained a huge amount of energy. After refining it, it could at least raise Murong Yu's strength by a small level. Then, Murong Yu took a step forward. When he reappeared, he had already rushed into the crowd. Time freeze. Space slash. Soul storm. Murong Yu's killing intense soared as he immediately unleashed his most powerful AoE attack. Bang! 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 Suddenly, the crowd exploded into a bloody mist. One by one, the experts were either cut into a bloody mist or had their souls destroyed. In a moment, the number of people in the crowd decreased rapidly. The rest of the people who had not been killed were shocked. They were almost scared to death. They were afraid that they would be the next to be killed. However, Murong Yu had already taken a step forward and rushed back the way he had come. All that was left behind was a group of people who had yet to recover from the shock. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Those who were killed were all from the Lin family. Damn it, I thought Murong Yu had gone crazy and started a massacre. I was scared to death. A rebirth state expert patted his thumping heart and said in shock. The others who were scared pale finally reacted and could not help but heave a sigh of relief. As for why Murong Yu was able to kill so many people from the Lin family in one fell swoop, it was because of their bloodline. With his current strength, he could easily tell who had the same bloodline flowing in their bodies. Of course, he could only see the bloodline of those who were much weaker than him. He could not see the bloodline of those who were at a higher level than him and had a higher bloodline. However, the bloodline of the Lin family was just an ordinary bloodline. He could see at a glance. Murong Yu unfolded his body and flew back the way he had come. Along the way, he mercilessly killed anyone who had the bloodline of the Lin family. It was not that Murong Yu was bloodthirsty, but if one did not remove the roots, they would grow back again. These people all knew that Murong Yu came from the Saint's world. Once Murong Yu left the Water Cloud planet, there was no guarantee that these people would not attack the Saint's world. Let alone rebirth state experts. Even some high-level world lords attacking the Saint's world would be a disaster for the Saint's world. Therefore, Murong Yu was prepared to kill everyone from the Lin family, killing a family and saving countless lives on a planet. Murong Yu made the choice very easily. After returning to the Lin family, Murong Yu killed everyone from the Lin family. Because of their confidence in Lin Xiongshi, all the experts and geniuses of the Lin family lived in the Lin family. This made it convenient for Murong Yu. With a slap, he killed everyone from the Lin family. Of course, there were definitely people from the Lin family who were traveling outside. However, those people were no longer a concern. Even if Murong Yu left now, the Lin family would still be attacked by countless people. After all, Lin Xiongshi had suppressed countless families and factions after reaching the chaotic realm. Once news of his death spread, those families and factions that had been suppressed would definitely retaliate. After destroying the Lin family, Murong Yu took all the treasures of the Lin family. In addition to the treasures in Lin Xiongxi's spatial treasure, Murong Yu became rich overnight and became the richest person on the Water Cloud planet. No family could compare to him. This was because Lin Xiongshi had ordered all the families and factions on the Water Cloud planet to hand over most of their wealth after reaching the chaotic realm. After doing all this, Murong Yu disappeared. The families and factions that had been suppressed by Lin Xiongshi did not do anything after Murong Yu disappeared. They continued to observe. This was because they were afraid of angering Murong Yu. After all, after killing Lin Xiongshi, how could Murong Yu not become the overlord of the Water Cloud planet? It was not until a year later that they finally confirmed that Murong Yu was not interested in becoming the overlord of the Water Cloud planet that they took action. They hunted down the Lin family all over the world. Under the pursuit of the various major factions, no one from the Lin family was spared. Even newborn babies were killed. At the same time, the various major forces also began to fight for power and territory. However, this had nothing to do with Murong Yu. He was just a passerby on the Water Cloud planet. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.